Now, hello everybody. I guess I'll talk and set this up for everybody. Give it a little bit of time for more people to hop into the room. Um, as you can see, we have a very special guest, a friend and colleague. I'm glad to have him on here and kind of go into some of his beliefs and understanding, and go into some of ours also. So first, I'll welcome you into the show. How are you doing tonight, Franco?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me on, Marcus. Buzz, great to see you. What's going on, everybody?
All right. How we doing tonight, Jose? Huh?
Doing great. Just got back from camp, very energized, and doing spectacular.
All right. So normally how we start off the show, we like to um I'll start off with saying Call Halal Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai has given honor to our Heavenly Father through his son Yahweh Shai, or Christ is known in most of the Christian world, or to even the secular world. Tonight we ask the question, what is conscious Christ? Of course, for those who are normal watchers of ours, know that me and Jose, we are Hebrew Israelites. We have our set of views, and then Franco has. Would it be a misnomer to say kind of some New Age views?
I don't know, because I don't know exactly everything that
Or if you just
requires
have
one to be New
questions,
Age.
or if it's
Someone
just
has
questions?
questions. Um, like I'm always learning stuff, but I mean, in regards to Christ consciousness, I think that there is like one truth, which we can get into.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I'm just a son of God, like everybody.
All right, and I see Glory is in the building. We have Steven in the building, and
What's up, Glory,
Propaganda.
Steve? That's the
So
Hispanic version of prop.
I
If he's
see.
speaking Spanish,
Well,
don't
hopefully,
troll. Don't troll today, prop, please.
yeah, hopefully you can be respectful tonight and be well behaved. On
Hmm.
the secular stuff, it's annoying. I haven't found a way to kick you off yet, but so I don't have a choice. But on here, try to please be respectful. If it's something that you have that you hold dear, I would do the same. So this conversation has kind of been going on for a while, kind of exploring each other's kind of worldviews and faith. And as of probably the last week or so,
Three,
um,
3 or 4 days.
3 or 4
Give or take.
days, there's been kind of just a lot more questions and a lot more back and forth. So I will turn it over to Jose so that he can kind of go into some of this, and then I'm going to sit back for a moment and just kind of hear some back and forth, and then I will lay in my understanding on certain topics, and I'm curious to hear your perspective also, Frank.
Okay.
So, in essence, myself and Marcus are of the belief that the Bible is the only true book in order to have an understanding of God, that this is a book that is meant to be taken much more significantly literal, and only a handful of bits that are to be taken metaphorical. For example, the first 3 to 4 chapters of Genesis need to be interpreted not completely at face value, but several metaphorical things that would have the Bible explain itself would be found throughout the rest of Scripture, all the way throughout the end of to the end of Revelations.
Okay. So why is it that only some parts are taken metaphorically? Which I know that because I've talked about this with Marcus with New Babylon, for example. That's a metaphor for the United States, right? And then you guys, well, Fuzz just said that there's some parts in Genesis that's taken metaphorically. How come not other parts can be taken metaphorically?
Because how the Bible breaks down, in a sense, is it gives you a metaphor, and in other parts it explains the metaphor, and then if that's not clear, then it re-explains it again. And so multiple scriptures break down the
Okay.
understanding. So the Bible itself breaks down the Bible when you read it thoroughly. And also, since a lot of churches only read from the 66 books and they don't take the 80 books,
Okay.
even though if you talk to most theologians, they will tell you that the 14 books of the Apocrypha are considered deuterocanonical. They are not considered false books or fake books. They just don't take them as primary canon. So as far as they've been able to establish most of them, they've been able to establish them as accurate, especially historically. So it's just that after the Reformation under Martin Luther is when they were taken out. So that does cloud some of the understanding, not having all 80 books.
Okay. And then that one of those 80 books that's not included in the 66 is the Book of Thomas,
No,
right? No. Okay.
no. The Book of Thomas would be a book that we would call I mean, what a
Fragmented.
pseudo. Well, I would say it's a what do they call it? A pseudo apocryphal book where there was supposedly a book of Thomas, but there are not nearly enough ancient manuscripts to be able to confirm or deny it. The 80 books that we have go off of the actual, if there's some kind of stone tablets, or there's some kind of, where it's been passed down over a long enough period that
Oh,
is
okay.
considered to
So
be canonical.
Book
For
of Thomas is not included, not even in the 80.
No,
Oh, okay.
like
So
another example is called the Book of Jasher, which
okay.
is referenced in the Book of Joshua, and yet there only exist tiny little fragments of scrolls that have ever come up to the surface, yet never has gotten to the point where it forms a complete manuscript for people to read and translate and then be about to be included in Bibles of the modern day.
the same with the Book of Enoch also.
Okay. So where are there parts in the Bible that you say need to be taken literally when it comes to what is Christ consciousness?
Well, see, it that's kind of depending on the answer, depending on how the question, because it's like when I say that there will become greater consciousness when Christ returns, yes, but also that comes with a lot of other things. It's not just going to be he's coming and it's just going to be an increase in consciousness. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen at that time, and it also won't necessarily be a complete rise in consciousness for everyone equally.
Yeah. It's going to be how do I put it? Like there's nuances with it, right? There's going to be,
Yes.
but overall, like the average level of consciousness will be raised.
Well,
And
because once the Messiah returns, then understanding will be given to
okay.
what the Bible is talking about. So in that way, yes, there would be a raise in Christ consciousness because
Okay.
everybody would you be able to see the certain scriptures which it says being fulfilled or not being fulfilled.
So
Is it too soon to bring out a precept?
Yeah. Just hold that precept.
Right.
Glory asks. So, what is it about the Bible that makes it to be taken more literally / seriously than other religious texts? For myself, and I think I can speak for Jose in this. Most Hebrew Israelites, because we focus on prophecy and confirming and proving prophecy, and not just like, oh, we found one thing. It's many prophecies that line up, and that we're able to see multiple prophecies. And
okay.
so, by seeing these prophecies, it gives credence to this book. Whereas many other religious texts are more steeped in, I would say, more
Like
thought and
spiritual
theory,
lessons.
spiritual lessons, and it's not necessarily saying, hey, in the future this group of people are going to do this to these other people, and then all these people are going to die. It doesn't. Most other religious texts don't do that.
So how were the prophecies done?
See, that's the thing. There's literally prophecies for the end days all the way in the first books of the Bible.
Okay.
So there's
How
prophecies from the very beginning all the way to the very end.
how are they able to do it?
How are they able to do which
To
part? Sorry.
predict the future. Like, how are
Um,
they able to prophesize things?
well, that's given revelations, I believe, from the Most High. He gives he puts the spirit on certain individuals to be
Okay.
prophets, to give that information, and that's how. And then there were scribes which were there to write down these certain texts, because
Would,
oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, would it be fair to say that he can do this through, like everything is his creation, right?
Yes,
So stars would be his creation as well.
true.
So could people be prophesizing things based off of patterns of the stars, similar to how several ancient native civilizations were able to do? Uh, People back then, they studied the stars. So is this a way that they were able to prophesize things?
Most definitely.
Okay.
I'm gonna answer one question real quick. Hostile rhetorical questions. I mean, I'm pretty sure. Hopefully, that person's not trolling. It says, "What is an Israelite? An Israelite is a nation of people." And do you have to be black to be one? No, you do not have to be black to be one. We do not hold to that understanding. Though there are Hebrew Israelite camps who believe that only Hebrew Israelites are black, and if you don't come from two so-called Negro parents, you are not Israelite. We do not hold that belief.
Is it also fair to say that certain plants or psychedelics could help people see things that can happen in the future, like tap into higher dimensions, higher frequencies, if these shrooms and other psychedelics are the creation of God?
We don't hold to that belief system. We believe that that's opening you up a lot of times to um, negative entities, which
Mm.
can manipulate you and can give you some insight, because the devil understands the Bible and knows the prophecies also. So they can give you information to suck energy from you, to manipulate you, many different things. But Fuzz, what was that precept that you had? Because I'm curious now.
And I
Matthew
want to
12.
say something else after that too about that.
Well, that was referring to
The
just
parables and
no, it was gonna be Matthew 24.
no, hold that one.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Sorry, drop
like,
my phone.
people, if they can see things if they take shrooms, but if they're not doing like other spiritual work, they might get confused about what they saw. They wouldn't be able
Mhm.
to like really explain it. But if they do other spiritual practices, then I think that can help them determine what it is that they're seeing, and they can be less susceptible of being taken advantage of certain spirits or whatever it is that they're seeing, whether it be negative or, I don't know, neutral spirits out there. Would
Well, I
that be
guess
fair to say?
I mean, we just don't hold to that belief, and I
Okay.
mean, we hold to the fact that because the Bible tells you to have a sober mind, and so if you're having a sober mind, you're not clearing your thoughts to drift away for something else to come in and give you whatever vision it may be. Even if they are giving you actual prophecy, that's going to happen. There's a
I,
trade-off. We believe there's a negative trade-off that comes with that.
yeah. So I think that a person has to be prepared if they are going to use psychedelics or whatever, because if they get a bad trip, they're not going to understand what's going on. Same thing if they're meditating. Sometimes when you're in that meditative state, and I know there are some beliefs that think that during meditation, certain negative things can take advantage of you. You could go into realms in the subconscious that are uncomfortable. You could see things that, I don't know, past traumas that you kept suppressed, and then it just starts bothering you. You don't know how to handle it. So in order to deal with that, there has to be some preparation in those individuals.
Well, we would say that the Most High has created you in a way so that you aren't to live in those past traumas. So when you're digging back into that, it's almost like trying to hack a system that He's built in to protect you
Yeah,
from those things which happen to you. And so it's kind of like playing in the dangerous ground, going through that
yeah.
field of opening yourself up to a bunch of things. Stephen makes a good quote here. He says, Jesus as a baby hid in Egypt from King Herod. he definitely ain't white. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely believe that Jesus was definitely not white.
I would say also, like to add on to what you said, Marcus, like when you go to those uncomfortable places, um, perhaps it gives you an understanding about why you are the way that you are in this the present moment. Like it builds awareness. And the way that I've learned what the Most High is, it's presence, it's eternity, it's infinity. If you're in that present moment, that stuff that happened in the past, you realize that doesn't exist anymore. It's not going to bother you anymore if you're in the present, if you're one with God.
Well, but my pushback with that would be that the Father wants you to come to Him with His burdens and all kind of other things instead of worrying about trying to do it all on your own, and that would be kind of a leave God out of it. I'm going to do it on my own kind of
Oh no,
mentality.
because you are seeking God by seeking the present moment.
But
You
but
see what I'm
um
saying?
but Jose, how do we know God?
by following the laws, statutes, and commandments.
Okay.
It's kind of like if a parent tells you something and they say, "Hey, Franco, I want you to come home, do your homework, clean your room, and I'll make sure I pay you allowance, and you're going out with your friends to skate on Friday night." You don't do it, you don't get that allowance, and you don't get to go out. And that's kind of how we see the scriptures. If you follow the rules, then you will be, given that spirit to be able to understand and discern things.
And the
Can
thing
I
is,
actually?
though, if the
Can I?
child, one second, with the child, they might rebel if they don't understand why they have to follow those rules. But if one is understanding about why those rules exist, and they can be like, oh, I can do those, but if I don't, there's going to be consequences. Like when we break down what the Ten Commandments are, they pretty much are like things you can do to be conscious, to be aware. And if you don't follow them, you're not going to be very conscious. You're going to do things that are going to give you consequences. Like for example, I mean, I don't know. We can put one out there. If you're lying to people, like "Thou shalt not lie" is one of the commandments, right? You're causing harm to people. You're causing harm to yourself. You're living in an illusion. If you're not respecting your parents, you're causing discomfort. You're not being understanding of them. That I think that commandment's there because you have to understand the previous generations. There might be some things that they don't understand. I think we can all attest to there. We have parents that don't understand certain things, but we have to be understanding of them, where they came from, why they think this way. So I mean that's what I learned about why there are those commandments. It's so that, oh, if you don't follow them, you're gonna be punished or whatever. You're gonna go to hell. The punishment is that you're letting your ego take control of you. You're living in autopilot and you're not being aware of your true self, which is one with God.
What do you mean by one with God?
So here is how I learned what God is and what we all are. Like our minds are pretty much. God is infinite, right?
Of course.
God is infinite. It's also nothingness because he's everywhere all at once. Nothingness, infinity are all the same thing. So we can think of infinity in this metaphor that I'm going to bring up. It's like an ocean, right? Within the ocean, there's going to be whirlpools. All those individual whirlpools are our mind. But it doesn't mean that that whirlpool is separate from the ocean. The whirlpool is still water, just like the ocean. But when we die, that whirlpool ceases. It's no longer spinning around. It becomes one. But also the whirlpool can realize, hey, I'm one with the ocean. I'm one with the universe. I am one with God. I'm one with the infinite.
I mean, I guess that's a way you could see it, but we all, but I feel like that the Bible gives you more clarity. It's able to drill down on things more specifically. Fuzz, was there anything you wanted to get in there? There's some good comments in here. Devil tried to tempt Jesus into committing suicide using the verse. Actually, it wasn't in necessarily committing suicide. It was into breaking his fast.
So, could
What about the re-election of Jesus? I'm not sure what you mean by re-election.
so
It talks about the election concerning the children of Israel. Yes, and the Bible also has very terrible things we should be against, most definitely. And I see Shadow Band in here. So
hey,
glad to have you, brother.
what's up, brother, Polly? Would you guys see what Stephen said? You know, the story of the devil trying to tempt Jesus. Would you guys also see that as a metaphor too? Like, I'm not here to say, oh, that literally didn't happen. Maybe it did, but it could also mean that the devil, in this case, is the ego, and Jesus was in the desert. Um, the desert in this instance would be the mind. In the mind, you're wandering around. You travel to certain places that may be uncomfortable, or you could give in to certain temptations like bodily cravings or whatever. But if you're aware of those things, you're not going to let your ego or the devil take control of you and give in to those temptations.
I mean, I guess that's a metaphor you can take, but we take that to be something that was literally happening. That
Yeah.
because of he's so in tune that he is actually being tempted by a spiritual deity, which is trying to manipulate him. Thus, going back to what we often consider original sin.
Yeah.
Jose, bring up.
But both could be true, right?
I mean,
Just because.
that's not necessarily. I mean, if you wanted to break it down that way, I mean, as a metaphor, yes. I mean, it still works as a metaphor, but I feel like the that is something which was something that was actually happening to him. That he was actually being tormented by a demon. Now, where does a demon normally torment you? In your own thoughts, in your
Yeah.
mind. So that's why I'm saying that technically that's not a wrong interpretation. Um, but I just believe that it's sometimes if you only reference it that way, it takes away sometimes of the fact of that it's something that was actually happening to him. Yes, Fuzz is gonna speak. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah, and after that, I wanted to bring up something too. But yeah, go ahead, Fuzz.
Well, I it's a little late to go back to this topic since y'all advanced far above it already. But what was it that you wanted me to pull up, Marcus?
I wanted you to bring up Genesis, Eve and the serpent. And any other precepts that you want to bring up that you heard that we've been talking about that you feel are pertinent?
Well, I wanted to prove the point using Deuteronomy 26 and 17. To get close to God is to walk in his ways and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments and to hearken his voice.
I was going to say, yeah, go ahead and read it.
Deuteronomy 26 and 17. Thou hast avouched the Lord this day to be thy God, and to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes, and his commandments, and his judgments, and to hearken unto his voice.
So that could also be literal and also metaphorical, right? If we're seeing God as, the highest, something that we should live by, we can also try to live by our true selves, being one with the universe, being aware of ourselves so that we don't cause harm onto others, or we don't exert negative energy onto others. So we're living with love for everybody. What do you guys think of that?
Well, but I would say that if that was your only focus and you made that your main focus, you would be excluding a lot of things which you're instructed to do.
Like what?
Precept.
Go ahead.
Proverbs 3 and 5. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding.
Okay. And the Lord in this case would be
God.
the infinite, God. the true self. Because the true self, if you go deep enough into what you are, what are we? We're made up of atoms. Atoms are made up of quartz, and it goes on forever and ever and ever into that ocean that I described earlier. So we're not separate from the ocean. We are literally the ocean. We are literally God.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it that way. Like the Bible doesn't refer to every single creature as God, basically. No.
Why is
Now,
that?
because for one, Deuteronomy 7:6,
Okay.
he literally has covenants. He's had covenants with the whole world, and he has different covenants for different people. So he doesn't have the same rules for every single body, nor does he have the same expectations for everybody. But he might make generalized rules for the whole entire world. Everybody in the world's not to do X, Y, and Z. But these people right here, you have some other rules that you have to follow, more specific rules. That's the reason why he says, like, the other nations, when they commit their sins, he lets their sins total up. And then they will be punished all at a certain time. Whereas the children of Israel, they're punished for their sins a lot sooner.
Could that be because
I
there's
have
a certain
another
group that is already in power, and so they are more immune to receiving consequences? Like, for example, the ruling elite, they have certain powers right now. They don't receive consequences right now, but over time, through generational karma, they will receive certain punishments. Right?
Well,
They're going.
here, I'll let him get this because
Okay.
to answer that one, we'll jump all the way somewhere else.
Psalms 147.
Yeah.
All right. So first, Deuteronomy 7:6. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth.
So I know this might not sound fair to some people, and they might have a hard time accepting this. But the Lord did literally choose a nation, which, okay, this is my nation, which I want to be a light to the people. I want them to teach my doctrine. I want them to do X, Y, and Z. Eventually, I'm going to give them my laws, my understanding, what I want done, and that I want them to eventually be my priests to put that word out into the world for everybody.
Okay.
That's literally what the scripture says. So,
Could it be? Oh, sorry. Could I bring one thing up before Fuzz goes?
Yeah.
Could it be that that's a metaphor, like the chosen people in this case would be the people that were able to reach that Christ consciousness, that realization of who they truly are? Why is that?
The reason why that's not is because the Israelites continuously failed at the things that he wanted them to do, and he punished them for it. And so over and over, they would. The Israelites have had 7 major captivities. They get in their land, they do what they're supposed to do for a short amount of time, then they start doing stuff which all the other nations are doing. It leads them into more sin. They get punished for it. They pray to get out of it. They get released from it because he grants them mercy, and then they go back to doing the same thing over. And that's happened repeatedly.
Isn't that because they lose power or they're not in power, so they're
no.
more susceptible to consequences?
It's them on their own committing their own sins because it's like if you have a contract. If me and you have a contract and I tell you, Franco, you're going to pay this every month, and you decide that you're not going to pay certain months, that's going to accrue interest. Eventually, that interest builds up till that might be a repossession. That's kind of what happens to the children of Israel. He gives them laws, statutes, and commandments on basically how to rule their nation. And they ignore those things often or pervert those things or take advantage of those things. And so they get punished for it.
So what happens to the people that aren't the Israelites, that aren't the chosen ones? What will God ultimately do to them?
Here, we'll get to that, but I want you to hit that 147.
This is Book of Psalms, chapter 147, and verse 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Israel. He hath not dealt so with any nation. As for his judgments, they have not known them. Praise ye the Lord.
And so he was telling right there. That's the reason why in the Bible repeatedly he literally says, even though he created the Messiah, and the Messiah with the host of the heavens created the whole earth, he says Israel will be my portion. So he says, this will be my nation that I will govern. And so the host of heavens, there's other deities which he put over other certain nations. So if other nations are not necessarily following what the people of Israel are doing, they're not Israelites. They're not being held to these things. Deuteronomy 28, and I guess you started one.
Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And
Now,
all these.
Oh, sorry. After that, skip to 14.
And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God. You want me to skip to where?
No, just skip down to verse 14.
Oh, 14.
Because the next couple of verses just give all the different things that he's going to do for them good. As we've already established, the Israelites did not listen, they did not follow. So they got the latter half. So hit 14 so we could go into why these other things start happening to them.
28 and verse 14. And thou shalt not go aside from any of the words which I command thee this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them.
Keep going.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
Okay.
So yeah, he literally tells them, if you do what I tell you to do, I will bless you. If you don't, I'm going to curse you.
Yeah, if you don't follow those commandments, which are supposed to elevate consciousness, if we know, the way I take it is, if you don't do it, if it's not like literal, but if you look at it metaphysically, metaphorically, the commandments, they're supposed to elevate your consciousness so that you can realize your true self. If you don't, then you're going to be enslaved by the state of unawareness, which is the ego. The ego doesn't know who its true self was.
But I think when you're focusing a lot too heavily on the ego and consciousness, but there's literally
that's what we perceive ourselves to be.
But he gives specific rules. It's not just the 10 Commandments. That's what I'm saying. It's not just the 10 Commandments. There's a lot more than 10 Commandments.
There's 603 more. There's 603 more.
Okay.
So pay attention.
So it gets very, very, very explicit in do not do X, do not do this, do not do that. And so it's not just like, okay, if we treat each other well, and then that'll raise her. No, it's more than that.
I assume that there must be like a metaphorical reason for why those 600 rules.
Well, no, I mean,
there.
America. How many laws are in America?
There's plenty.
Exactly.
Right?
So if you have a nation,
but those are straightforward. Those aren't just like
and
metaphorical.
How to Jose? How to Leviticus, and give him a couple of laws. That way you can see what we're talking about. It's not just about ego, and you can't run a nation without laws. And so this gives direct, clear-cut laws that you have. Just like in the 10 Commandments, it tells you that you shouldn't commit murder. That's just one out of the 10 Commandments. But go ahead.
Let me actually have Numbers 15 and 38.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. There's one.
Okay.
And I can stand up and show what that's talking about.
Book of Numbers, chapter 15 and verse 38. Speak unto the children of Israel, and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a riband of blue.
Okay.
And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of the Lord, and do them. And
Okay.
that ye seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which ye used to go a whoring, that ye may remember to do all my commandments, and be holy unto your God.
So what happens to people if they don't follow them, and also what happens to the people that are not the chosen ones? Like, what does God ultimately do to these people?
Well, what it tells you is if you bless Israel, you will be blessed. If you curse Israel, you will be cursed.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I perceive that as if you don't, um, if you take God for granted, right? You're cursing God. Like if you take your true self for granted and give in to the ego.
No. It says if you literally curse the children of Israel, you will be cursed.
I'm just giving my metaphorical interpretation of it.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's one of those things where it's not really a metaphor.
But it
It's
still works.
no.
Right?
There, it's being specific. It's
All right.
saying if you do this to these people, it's kind of like it says like if you treat Franco bad, you are going to get your ass kicked. Period. There's no metaphor to it. That's what's going to happen. If you take care of Franco and you make sure he's good, I'm gonna make sure to take care of you, hook you up with a good job,
Oh.
money, whatever. So it's saying like literally, what? And Stephen, this is not talking about Israelis. This is not what that's talking about. So that not that Israel.
Another very simple to follow law in Leviticus 19 and 19. Ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with a diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Neither shall a garment mingled of linen and woolen come upon thee. Meaning that your clothes are meant to be always 100% of one material, not 50% polyester and not 50% cotton, but 100% of one material.
Okay.
For that last part.
Yeah.
Well, right now I don't know what the meaning of that would be, but I mean,
it's literally what it says. Don't wear mixed fabrics.
We'll humor that for now.
Or give another one. Dietary laws.
Oh, that is like if you are not eating correctly, you're not gonna have a healthy state of mind.
Well,
Like the gut and the mind are all connected with each other. If you're
and
eating poison, you're also poisoning your mind.
Well, you're poisoning your body too.
There's that connection there that triggers anxiety as well. Triggers anxiety, depression. Like we are what we eat.
Well, that's the reason why these dietary laws are important.
Like
back in those times.
Yeah, pork, for example, right? There is a high risk of having parasites with that. You're going to get sick. If you have an upset stomach, that is going to cloud your mind. You're not going to be in a happy state.
Or you're going to have higher cholesterol too. You're going to have higher sodium. All these things possible. Some of these things can actually deal with your heart. You can add parasites into your body.
And that makes it more difficult for people to realize who their true selves are if they don't have a healthy mind.
Stephen asked a very, very good question here. He said, what is a literal Israel? If it's a thing that we curse / praise or a literal rule, it's a group of people. Now, the question is figuring out who actual Israel is and who Israel is not. And that's something that the world has done a really good job making very convoluted and confusing and saying that it doesn't matter to be specific on that. So that's something that the Christian church really, does a number on people, and Catholicism in general is done.
So what happens to the people who are not like the chosen ones? Like people who are not Israelites, what happens to them? What does God do to them?
Precept.
Go ahead.
This is Jeremiah chapter 46 and 28, a future prophecy. Fear thou not, O Jacob my servant, saith the Lord. For I am with thee, for I will make a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee. But I will not make a full end of thee, but correct thee in measure, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished.
Okay, so in other words, what happens?
Okay, break it down. Hostile feels like I'm interrupting too much, so go ahead first.
O Jacob my servant, this is only referring to the Israelites, those that come from the seed of the patriarch Jacob, which is the 12 tribes of Israel. For I am with thee, for I will make a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee. That where we're going to be ending up as a consequence of violating the laws pursuant to Deuteronomy 28, where we're scattered from one end of the earth to the other. But because we are God's chosen people, I will not make a full end of thee, but correct thee in measure, and not leave you wholly unpunished.
So what happens? The people that aren't chosen aren't permitted into the kingdom of
No.
God?
Isaiah 61.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, and verse 1.
Yeah, go ahead and just start at 1.
Book of Isaiah, chapter 61, and verse 1. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified.
Keep going.
And they shall build the old wastes, they shall raise up the former desolations, and they shall repair the waste cities, the desolations of many generations. And strangers shall stand and feed your flocks, and the sons of the alien shall be your plowmen and your vine dressers. But ye shall be named the priests of the Lord. Men shall call you the ministers of our God. Ye shall eat the riches of the Gentiles, and in their glory shall ye boast yourselves.
I wanted to read that. I want you to keep going because Stephen says here, Jesus came to fulfill the covenant, dying for both Jews and Gentiles. A lot of the Christian church, they have an understanding of what Gentiles means. That if you read all of the scriptures, it starts contradicting. That's the reason why they have a hard time understanding some of these scriptures, because there's not proper context. And part of not having the 66 books is part of why you lose that context. If you understand what they're talking about when they're saying Gentiles, then it starts making more sense of what these scriptures are saying as a whole. Revelations 13 and 9.
Yeah, so what I got from that is essentially the people that aren't the chosen ones are going to become slaves of the people who are the chosen ones.
The people going ahead, go ahead and read Revelations 13, 9 and start at 9.
You're on the right track, Franco. You're on the right track.
Yeah, well, we don't. I'm not dodging it. I'm not dodging from my point.
That's what happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 13 and what?
13 and 9.
Revelations 13 and 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints.
That just sounds like karma.
It is karma. That's what we're trying to say. Let me check something because Hostel keeps saying the stream is down and it might be your internet. I think it's probably fine because we're still going.
So
And Stephen's exactly correct. Going ahead and bring up that scripture that he says right there, Matthew 22:14. Good scripture, Stephen.
Yeah, the stream's fine, by the way. Just verifying.
That still
Oh,
sounds like a spiritual lesson, though, right?
It is.
If
And that's the
you,
reason why it talks about, that's the reason why I mentioned before, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. And then you start finding out that plenty of nations have cursed Israel and they have not dealt with that judgment.
so like if you do, you have to do unto others what you would like them to do unto you. Otherwise, there could
Yeah.
be negative consequences.
There will
But
be negative
like,
consequences.
but if we enslave a group of people, aren't we going to receive negative consequences for that?
Not in that final not in that final I'm trying to think. That's what we call an eschatological. I can't talk tonight.
eschatological.
Yes, that word. End time prophecies.
Okay.
At that point, there will be what some people call the Millennial Reign, and so when Christ returns, he will have there will be 1,000 years where the Israelites um, and will rule alongside the Messiah. And in that time, those nations will basically have to pay their pittance. And then after that time, they will be released back into their own lands. Well, almost everybody. Obadiah 1:18. Now, I'm not going to specify who this is, but this is what it says. The Bible literally says Obadiah 1:18.
Could I give my prediction on this?
Uh-huh.
So, like with astrology and everything, people can predict what someone's personality may be like. The same could be said also because stars really affect the gravitational pull of molecules and atoms and everything. Somehow that has an effect on maybe how our DNA is structured, how our genes get expressed or whatever, and that affects our personality. The same could be said for groups of people, nations, and how they act. And so you can predict what can happen to certain nations. So if there is a nation out there that's being a bully, then if the other nations, if they're going to do something to try to tame that beast, so that they don't continue to cause more harm, or maybe if those other nations all team up and take power away from that bully nation, if they're low consciousness enough, if their consciousness isn't as elevated, they could be just as bad as the previous ruler. But the way that evolution goes is we're always going to be getting closer to God. We're always going to be elevating our consciousness as time moves forward.
Hey, Vicky.
Was that fair?
I see Mona in there. I think
What's up, Mona?
The only thing that I would probably say is slightly different is it literally says in that last in that millennial reign, the laws will be written on the Israelites' heart, and so they will no longer sin. They will keep the law perfectly. So they're not going to go astray and rule things with.
Probably because they're more
preset.
They're more aware. They're more Like I said, as time passes on, we become more aware, right? They are more aware of themselves. They're not going to let the ego take over and violate those commandments. Right?
Yes, and I think it goes more to your earlier point. Remember, you said when the Messiah returns that the consciousness will be raised. Well, part of the laws being put in their heart, their consciousness will be raised at that point.
Yeah. So, I see it as a metaphor. Like there's not going to be like a literal person, but there's going to be, or maybe, I'll get to the maybe in a little bit, but it's a metaphor for that elevation of consciousness. It can only start with one person that has a sort of epiphany or whatever, or they lead by example, and then that is contagious. It spreads. Knowledge can spread. Understanding can spread.
Yeah, I mean...
now, can I do Matthew 24?
Sure.
Book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 23. This is Christ talking, by the way. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders.
Yeah, people that get it wrong. Yeah, false prophets.
Insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall the coming of man shall be.
You guys know who the false prophets are? Those are the cult leaders. Those are the people that are misleading people in some ways.
I would say yes, maybe on a minor level, but I would say that that's talking about honestly the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope.
Oh, that's a cult too.
Yeah, but I would say that that's the main one, because a lot of different faiths are taking their lead from them, whether they even realize it or not.
Yeah.
Did you have another?
They misinterpret a lot from the Bible.
Did you have another one, Jose?
I'm on Obadiah if you still want to get that.
Oh yeah. Obadiah. Go ahead. Obadiah 1 and 18.
Book of Obadiah, chapter 1 and 18. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them, and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau, for the Lord hath spoken it.
So there will be one nation which will, after that millennial kingdom, will be completely obliterated.
Wait. I have some questions there. So you're saying that one day there will be this one world government or one world nation, but everybody is conscious enough that it's not going to be like the past nations that weren't as conscious. It's not going to be like that one world nation that we hear some of these people talk about, like New World Order or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, Marcus,
I know
right? Yeah. Where they want to have control over the people for their own selfish and egoic reasons. But this will be a different one world nation where everybody is conscious enough to respect each other, conscious enough to realize who they really are, and lead with love, live with God. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that whether like a lot of people they focus on the New World Order, and because the New World Order, part of their goals, if everything was to be fulfilled the way they want, it would be one nation state, one world economy. I mean, one world monetary policy, education. Everything will be completely one size. You know, every nation will all do the same. It will eventually become one language for the whole world, and there will become one religion for the whole world. Now, the reason why, and my belief and understanding, is that the things which, the wicked powers that control this place, they take everything from the Bible and they invert it and pervert it. So they try to do the same things. They just flip everything inside out and do it in the opposite manner, because it literally says the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. And so it's letting you know that the God of this world, who is ruling it, the reason why you have evil people who are ruling everything now is because the spiritual deity Satan rules over those people.
In other words, their ego.
I mean, you could say it's ego, but we believe it's an actual spiritual entity where he has actual demons and dominion up under him.
Yeah. I mean, if that's true, it doesn't mean that the other one isn't true, though.
That's what I'm saying. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's not true. If you want to use the term to call it the ego, we just, like, for instance, angels. You have left hand angels and right hand angels. The only difference is some of the angels are on the side of the Messiah and the Most High, and the other half are on the side of Satan.
Mm.
And they're still all subject to him at the end.
Yes,
of the
well,
Yeah, they're messengers, angels,
Mhm.
right? They're messengers from God, and when people receive those messages, it's like they're having an epiphany. Is that true? They're having an epiphany about who God is, and that God was within them all along.
well, I don't want to take all the questions. Jose, did you want to take that one, or did you want me to answer?
Go ahead.
Well, when they have the epiphany, we believe that's what's called when the Spirit is placed upon you. So when the Spirit is on you, the Spirit will guide you. The Spirit will guide you to information, to guide you to do something. Um, and then there's a difference of when you're getting visions. Like visions, now, the Most High can decide to give you a vision. Can just say, you know what, I'm going to take you to the astral plane and show you something. That we do believe in also. It's just whenever you try to manifest it for yourself is when there's a problem. Man, Stephen makes a good one here. The debate I have is a misinterpretation of the Antichrist because there isn't a specific Antichrist. Correct. But those are, and in Christianity, a lot of people push that there is like this one Antichrist character who is coming. That is not accurate.
Oh, Mona brings up different types of messengers. I think what that means is that there are higher dimensions out there, and people can misinterpret what reality is, what God is, and they can give in to certain egoic intentions. So yeah, it just depends on what messages it is that they're receiving or how they're interpreting those messages. The way that they're interpreting those messages are those different angels.
Remember we were talking about some of the laws. Here's a law that Hostel puts up here. It says, "Thou shalt not boil a kid in its mother's milk." Exodus 23:19. Yes, that is one of the laws. Now, a lot of people in certain beliefs think that it means that you can't put cheese on beef. That's not correct. What that's talking about is a literal baby kid. You don't kill a baby goat and then put them in. I mean, not goat, baby lamb, and then put them in its mother's milk. You don't do that. I mean, so you don't literally boil it in its mother's milk. That's what that's talking about.
Yeah. So in the past conversations that I had with Fuzz, he brought up that God will come down at one point and will breathe fire from his breath and kill all those that are not the chosen people. The way I interpreted that is realizing your true self, God, is going to burn away your ego, and you'll go from a stage of unawareness, which is what the ego is, to a stage of awareness. But do you guys interpret that in the literal way, or is that just
Revelations 14? You can start at 1, because this is how I mean. Now, some of the stuff when he's talking about the fire from his mouth and stuff, that's not literal. I don't believe he's going to come down and literally fire coming out of his mouth, but his words are going to be like fire. But there are certain parts where he is actually doing stuff, and some of this is metaphorical. So, but here's another part where it can explain how some of these things that are going to happen. So,
it's probably the power is metaphorical for the power of speech, spreading the message of God to those other people and burning away their demons or their egos.
Because we're not in the belief that prophecies don't have multiple meanings or dual meanings. Some of them have multiple meanings. But whenever you're ready, sir.
You're in that realm too, Fuzz? That things can have multiple meanings?
Of course.
Okay.
14:1. Revelations 14:1. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount of Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song before the throne, and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song, but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins.
Now, let me hold on a second.
Yeah.
When it says not defiled with women because they are virgins, that does not mean that these are literal virgins. They didn't have sex. What this means is they did not accept the doctrines, other faiths, and follow after these other doctrines. They stayed with the true faith. So,
by the way, I found what I was looking for when it came to when it comes to Yahweh Shai. It's in 2nd Ezra 13. All right. Anyways, Revelations 14 and 4. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. And keep going?
Yeah, go ahead and keep going. Shalom, Misha.
And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, and the sea and the fountains of waters. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up for ever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name.
So that right there, that went into the part about his speech coming out and how it, like a fire, how it's, fiery and powerful and booming, like how it said, his voice is like thunder. And then that also goes to the second part where it's talking about the destruction that's going to happen to this great city or mystery Babylon.
Can I pull up what I wanted from 2nd Ezra 13?
Of course.
All right. This is 2nd Ezra in the Apocrypha, chapter 13 and verse 1. And it came to pass after 7 days, I dreamed a dream by night. And lo, there arose a wind from the sea, that it moved all the waves thereof. And I beheld, and lo, that man waxed strong with the thousands of heaven. And when he turned his countenance to look, all the things trembled that were seen under him. And whensoever the voice went out of his mouth, all they burnt that heard his voice. All they burned that heard his voice, like as the earth faileth when it feeleth the fire. And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men out of number, from the four winds of the heaven, to subdue the man that came out of the sea. But I beheld, and lo, he had graven himself a great mountain, and flew up upon it. But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not. After this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instruments of war. But only saw that he sent out of his mouth, as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests. And they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest. and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid.
Okay. So that could be a literal destruction of a nation. It can also be at the same time the destruction of the collective ego of a nation, and there's an elevation of consciousness.
Well,
Yeah.
how about this? How about we read one more for you and tell me if you still think that it's just talk? Because I know that one's very, very unless you know a bunch of different other precepts, that one's not as clear. Revelation 18. And you're very, very welcome, Vicky.
18 and from the 18 and 2? Or
yeah, go. Well, just start since it started. Start with one.
Revelations chapter 18 and verse 1. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye perceive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewardeth you, and double unto her double according to her works. In the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore
break it down. Go back to that one and break down that part.
Verse 7?
Yes.
So this is one nation that has a lot of pride and live deliciously, meaning having
greedy.
much abundance, and for her to say in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. I'm in a position of power, and no one can possibly take me down.
Oh, keep going.
To verse 8.
Yeah.
Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her. 9 onwards.
Yeah, keep going.
And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her, and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come.
All right. Oh, no, keep on, sorry.
And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver, and precious stones, and of pearls and fine linen, and purple and silk, and scarlet, and all fine wood, and all manner vessel of ivory, and all manner vessels of the most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble. We can skip all the way to 17.
My girl says hi. Shalom, Liz.
And we can skip all the way to 17 because it's just repeating a whole bunch of abundance.
Yep.
For in 1 hour so great riches has come to naught, and every shipmaster, and all the company in ships, and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate.
Okay. So,
Oh no, go ahead.
so are these people that committed all these sins? You guys also consider like the Edomites. Would you say that they're separate from God?
Well,
We read
in
Obadiah 1 and
in this
18.
yeah,
That they're
in this destruction, it's not only going to be that in this nation. I mean, in this destruction, it's going to be even Israelites that are going to get destroyed in this one.
okay.
It's going to be a mixture of all nations. Anybody who's part of
2/3
Babylon,
apparently.
the two thirds of
The,
Israel has to be destroyed also.
okay. So I mean, the way I interpret that is that still those 2/3 of Israelites,
Those are the ones that are
the
not going to follow
Edomites,
prophecies. They're going to,
there's still going to be destruction in their ego and an elevation of consciousness. Now it may be true that some people may die and some may, like, I don't know that there's going to be like wars in the near future. But I think that it's still at the same time true that there's still going to be an elevation in consciousness in the majority of the population, and their egos are going to be destroyed.
here. Well, I want to read. I want to read one more and see what you think about this.
Okay.
Second Esdras 16 and started, I think, 10. I think 10.
Second Ezra chapter 16 and 10. Well, actually, you might start. Actually, it should be better to start at verse 8.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
The mighty Lord sendeth the plagues, and who is he that can drive them away? A fire shall go forth from his wrath, and who is he that may quench it? He shall cast lightnings, and who shall not fear? He shall thunder, and who shall not be afraid? The Lord shall threaten, and who shall not be utterly beaten to powder at his presence? The earth quaketh, and the foundations thereof. The sea ariseth up with waves from the deep, and the waves of it are troubled, and the fishes thereof also, before the Lord, and before the glory of his power. For strong is his right hand that bendeth the bow, his arrows that he shooteth are sharp, and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the worlds. Behold, the plagues are sent, and shall not return again, until they come upon the earth. The fire is kindled, and shall not be put out, till it consume the foundation of the earth. Like as an arrow which is shot out of a mighty archer returneth not backward, even so the plagues that shall be sent upon the earth shall not return again.
And I just wanted to read all those because those are multiple, and these aren't even the only ones. These are just multiple, like, whole long scriptures where it's talking about the destruction of a nation that's coming.
Mm.
And so
it seems like it's describing also when it'll happen.
Well, it
like, because when it talks about like the horse and the archer, the plague also, like these sound like, well, the horse and the archer sounds like Sagittarius. The plague, I can't remember which one that was close to, but I think it's telling us in what age or what time period this might happen.
Well, it tells us in a different way than astrology. For instance,
I mean, it tells us what will happen in addition to
no.
when it might happen.
Like I'm trying to think of what chapter should we go to.
Wisdom of Salt. Well, okay, you mentioning Sagittarius has me feel like the reliance on the stars, like has me
Which
wanting to
God
go to
created.
has me go to Wisdom of Solomon 13.
Okay.
Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13 and 1. Surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of God and could not out of the good things that are seen known him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the work master. But he deemeth either fire or wind, or the swift air, or the circle of the stars, or the violent water, or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world. With whose beauty, if they being delighted, took them to be gods, let them know how much better the Lord of them is. For the first author of beauty hath created them. But if they were astonished at their power and virtue, let them understand by them how much mightier he is than they.
So what does that mean?
Don't try to interpret the stars as one thing when it conflicts with other things that the Most High has said that he intends to put in motion.
So what's conflicting here?
Well, what I was going to say is that it gives you the can you read things from the stars in certain ways? Yes. One thing I was going to bring up earlier is that one of the tribes of the children of Israel, one of their abilities was to read the stars. I mean, the tribe of Issachar would read the stars to be able to determine if the children of Israel needed to go to war or not, or if they should go to war or not.
Yeah.
They were able to read the stars to be able to decide which direction and which pathways they needed to go to get certain places. So that was a gift that was bestowed on that specific tribe.
Yeah.
But a lot of a lot of these prophecies were not written by people from that tribe, so they wouldn't have had the abilities to prophesy that way. And
Or
so,
as accurately, perhaps.
well, they gave us clues in other ways, though.
Oh.
Outside of astrological ways.
Oh,
They
I'm
gave
sure
us,
there's other ways. Yeah.
well, they gave us the biggest thing to look into, and this is harder for a lot of people to break down and understand. I can kind of just go skim over it real quick because it does take a deep breaking down. You have what's called the seven seals, the seven trumpets, and the seven vials. If you're able to discern what's going on and what's happening at these points, this is telling you events of stuff at that time, which was going to be a future prophecy for them, but at some time it had to happen or is going to happen for us. How we discern it in short, because like the Christian church, a lot of the Christian church believes that we're in the second seal.
Okay.
We've determined by looking at certain things that we've discerned that we are actually in the fifth seal, possibly going into the sixth seal. And so if we're going into the fifth seal, going into the sixth seal, it tells us how much closer we are towards that final war of Armageddon or Armageddon.
Okay.
So that's how I would say, because the trumpets and seals kind of go together. One is reciting one thing, then it's kind of coming in another verse to kind of break that down a little bit and re-say it in another way, because that's literally what's going on in Revelations. It's saying something, and then it's re-saying it another way, and then re-saying it another way, and it's giving you certain events over and over and over, where some people think that these are just a bunch of different separate things that are going to happen. And then peace out, people calling it a night. Oh yeah.
I
well, anybody who's calling it a night, I thank you guys for dropping in here. Definitely, it's much appreciated.
So yeah, I gotta head out soon too. But before I head out, can we talk about like some of the disagreements also? That
sure.
Well, mainly I was having like with Fuzz, and then we'll see like where
you
where
guys
also
can
stand
hash it out, and I'll sit back and see if there's anything I can add. I'll
Yeah,
try
yeah.
not to overtalk you guys.
So God, you don't believe is infinite, right?
Of course, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay, because
I'm sorry.
Fuzz said. So I guess you guys aren't in agreement with that.
Yes.
You
God
are in
is
agreement, or you are?
God is infinite.
How come you said that he wasn't?
there are characteristics of God that you want him to be, which is contrary to what he
Which is
allowed us
like
to know
what?
about him.
Like what?
That his infinity would extend to providing salvation based on anybody outside of the children of Israel, and it being connected to consciousness.
So there's going to be people in their lifetime that are never going to be aware of their true selves, right? So
Well,
especially in the past, right? Because there
well,
was collectively there was low consciousness in the past, but there will be people throughout their whole entire lives are just going to be straight up in autopilot and not
well.
realize their true selves.
I have a question for you then. Do you believe that everybody it's possible for them to come to a good or like perfect consciousness?
Is it possible for eventually? I mean, when you die, you become one with the infinite. You become one with God. But you are already like that to begin with. It's just that you're unaware of it in the ego form. Like who you guys see right now, like me, Franco, Fuzz, Marcus. Like that's just a creation of our ego. But if at the root of it, who we really are, it's not just this. We are part of the ocean. We are the universe. We are God. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I don't quite entirely agree with it. Like for instance, the Bible literally says that he made vessels for honor. He made some vessels for dishonor. So some people that state, that low vibration or low consciousness which people see, that's literally what they were made to be. That's literally what they were made to do. And so and it literally says that everybody's he knew us before we were born. So our concept of free will is just for our mortal realm. Like I feel like I might get up and decide I'm going to
Oh yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
pizza or
So
whatever, and I feel like that's what I'm going to do. But he has already put it in me to decide that yeah, you're going to have pizza. He's put it in me that I'm going to decide that I'm going to want to teach the Bible, and so he's already decided out and planned out our lives. We believe that the illusion of free will is not a real thing.
because in the infinite, all possibilities already exist.
Well, it's already been done.
Yeah.
It's like it's we look at it. I mean, some people say
I
scripture
mean,
is short for script. It's like we're all acting in a movie which he's written out, and we're playing
mm,
our roles, and there's no deviating to the right or to the left of it.
yeah.
Like God could, if he feel like it, have given his laws and statutes and judgments to other people, which he has every right to do in his infinity, because we've done nothing but historically gone off of it. But because he is a God of his word, he confines his covenant and his promises only to the children of Israel.
And those are the people who realize who their true selves are. That
Well,
I am state, right? That is the being. Because as you guys agree that God is, he just is. God is being, right?
mhm.
All of us are also in that realm of being. It's just that people aren't aware of that when they're
Well, I don't believe all
distracted.
people. That's all.
Yeah.
That's cause why not? If
Because
everyone's part
because
of the infinite,
well, no, because according to the Bible, he literally made different people different. Like he even says in
but
the Bible, I put a difference between you and the Egyptian, talking about the Israelites. He literally says in your laws, doesn't it say ye are gods? That's talking to the Israelites. It's not talking to every single person
just because
in
there's differences doesn't mean that we're not
but he never
separated from the universe. Like
well
we're all
that,
still a part of it. We all still
but but
exist.
but what he's saying when he's saying that you are a God, he's saying you are a power, you are, and everybody is not going to hold that same level. There's not going to be, according to what I say in the Bible, and I'll make this one response real quick to hostile. According to the Bible, if you believe in the Bible, it literally debunks the whole notion of free will, because it literally tells you that he guides the steps of men. If God is guiding your steps, how are you doing it on your own? It's impossible. So the Bible literally contradicts the whole idea of free will when you completely understand it.
It doesn't mean that don't have a right to choose. You can still do that. It's just that
It
in
literally
the
tells you
higher
no
in the
man chooses
realm
God.
beyond time, everything has already happened. Get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, the scripture literally tells you no man chooses God. He chooses you.
But literally, if we have to call God infinite, then that would include everything, right?
But
So every person.
what you're doing is you're saying in order for him to be infinite, he has to fit this criteria. He is infinite. He doesn't have to fit a criteria which we decide for him. Like he said, I
Right.
made vessels for honor and vessels for dishonor. He can say, you know what? It's kind of like this. I draw and paint sometimes. I can draw something that I really like and keep it hanging on the wall, and then I could draw something that I don't like and throw it in the trash. It's the same thing with an infinite God.
But
He
that
can
thing you
decide
threw in the
happiness.
trash still exists and you still created it. It's still
What
in the universe.
if I burn it up? Does it still exist?
Yeah, it still exists when you bring it present in your mind. And also, let's say you're not thinking about it, then that's in the realm of nothingness, which God is also nothingness and infinity. Like, for example, when we talk about lies, which Fuzz brought up in our conversation, our lies God? Do lies exist? Like if I say that I'm 7 feet tall, does that actually exist? No, no, that's in the realm of nothingness. It doesn't actually exist. But if you're thinking about it, it exists in the mind, and the mind is part of the universe, is part of God.
Yeah, but I don't really get how that. I mean, I guess I'm a little lost there because it, it becomes irrelevant if it's not real or if it's not, like for instance,
That's
yeah,
the thing, though.
you
It's
you.
infinite and nothing all at the same time.
But if he's an infinite God, he can completely zap you out till you are nothing, till you no longer exist.
But if you don't exist, you become nothingness, and God is also nothingness, right? There's nowhere you
Well, I
can
don't
go
get how God is nothingness
where,
though.
because
I don't agree.
nothingness is infinite,
Well,
right?
I don't agree. What do you believe? Like you believe like the Most High is just like a void, just like energy sitting out there, or do you believe he has
Well, there's things even in a vacuum, right?
But I don't believe that he's just some void sitting out there. I believe, like according to the
No, it's
scripture, it
not just
says
a
that
void. Like we're here too,
no,
right?
that he says that he made man in his image. So
Because we're creators.
we would be designed like he is designed. And so it's not just a void. There's actual a being that's there.
It's hard to grasp with the logical and rational mind. And that's why we have to go post rational and experience what that is. What it is. Like you can experience that when you are just in the present moment. You can experience
But
that also in the meditative state.
so do you believe that we'll get to a point where you're going to meditate and literally be sitting with God out in the Milky Ways and stuff?
I mean, we're taking the form of human beings right now.
But do you feel that that you will be able to transform from a human being?
We will transform into that after we die, but we can't do that in this form. This is just one of the infinite possibilities that exist that do have limitations, but at the end of the day, it's still a part of that infinity.
Well, I think that that infinity that you're like I look at it like this. The Bible doesn't focus a whole lot on God's infinity, or and so I don't spend a lot of time
It
focusing
does.
on it. No,
When he
actually, it doesn't.
says, I am,
I
that
said
is a
it
state
doesn't
of
spend a
being.
lot of time on it. It spends more time on telling you what he expects from you instead of dwelling on his nature.
Because he expects you to reach that state of true self. And that
No, I
state
think
of true self,
he gives you law, statutes, and commandments, which are pretty clear and plain, which he
to help
wants you
you
to do.
reach that state of awareness. Awareness with a capital A. right?
Uh,
Awareness,
I
capital A, universe, capital U. We put a capital there so we know that we're referring to the same thing, which
because
is
it's kind of
God.
sounding a little mystical, and I don't.
No, 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 no.
I think
It sounds like that
what
to
he's
the
saying is
rational when you're
pretty
looking at
kind of
it
simple.
rationally. When you're looking at it rationally, it sounds like that. But if you look at it post rationally, if you put yourself in that present moment, then you actually get that experience.
I guess I'm
Because
having a because
it's
he wants.
it's hard to, yeah, it's hard to grasp it with just the logical mind, right? There's all these
Well,
things
no. I
that
think that there's
sound
so
like they
many.
contradict
Well, what it is
themselves.
I think that there's so many other things that he wants us to be focused on far before jumping to the elevation of worrying about godlike thoughts and stuff like that. I think he would
Oh,
prefer that we just learn how to start treating each other
just
with
cause, yeah, yeah,
respect
yeah.
and
Just
humility
cause,
before we start jumping to trying to think of ourselves as being joined in infinity and all that other stuff. I think
but
that that's
realizing that
putting
helps
the
you,
cart way ahead of the horse.
but realizing that does help you treat others in a conscious way. It helps
It
you love other people, helps
if
you
you're
realize that
if
that
you're
other person
focusing
is also you.
if you're
You don't want to
focusing on
mistreat that other
consciousness.
person, right?
Well,
If you know that,
if you're focusing on trying to please God by your own understanding and what you think instead of what He's telling you, then maybe.
but that is what
But
he's telling you,
he gives you specific commandments. Just do this.
to
Don't
elevate the
do the.
consciousness to realize who you
It doesn't.
are.
But where does it tell you that this is done to elevate your consciousness?
It's not going to explicitly say
And
that
that's
because it
my.
was written for those times, for the people of those
No,
times to
it wasn't.
understand, which we can also learn to interpret in our time.
Well, here's the thing. How is it written for those times if it's giving you end time prophecies? It's writing out something for all of our lifespan. It's not something that stopped at a certain point and it's just something for us to look back on. It's
Reset.
something that still exists up until now.
Because those are still spiritual lessons that we can interpret now,
That's like saying
right?
that the Bible had a cutoff period and it's no longer none of the things that are going on are still relevant.
No, it is still relevant because realizing the true self is an infinite thing.
Well, then how are you realizing the true self? What guidelines are you going on to realize the true self?
You got
Well,
to be in the present moment.
I got a question.
Hang on, hang on, first, because Marcus asked the question. I'm trying to answer it. Being in the present moment is one way. Meditation is another way. Learning about it, seeing, okay, how can I get there? And that's why the Bible is written in a certain way for people from a certain culture to understand that. But we have to constantly be informing ourselves to understand, to get the right idea of what that is. But you have to do the spiritual work in order to reach that
Well,
realization.
oh, sorry, I'll let Fuzz get in
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
What are
go
you gonna
ahead,
say, Fuzz?
Fuzz.
All right. Revelations 22 and 18. This is the very end of the Bible. If you lend an ear to any of the other prophecies that we have been saying, all right, this looks like it comes to pass, and this can mean this, but this also must be taken at face value. Revelations 22 and 18. For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the prophets of this and if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life and out of the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book.
That's not adding on if you're interpreting what is truly meant by those words.
But
Adding
what?
on would be adding your own additional thing for a selfish reason.
Okay, but what we're saying is, if you are just trying to guess at what you think God is trying to tell you, versus reading what He's telling you to do and just doing what He tells you to do in the book, then that is a problem because then you're not following what He's saying. You're trying to say you understand God well enough and you can just figure it out without listening to what He's saying.
But you're understanding what it is that he's telling you.
Yeah, but he gives specific things which he tells you to do. It's not about it's kind of like your parents. When you're a babe, when you're a child, you don't understand exactly why your parents tell you to do everything. It's not for you to understand every single thing they tell you to do. You will understand it at one point, but the sole purpose is to do it
But that's
first.
the
And then
natural
once you do
process
it,
of understanding, is where you have that rebellious stage, right? You have that rebellious stage. You don't want to listen to them, but once you gain that understanding, you understand why they were telling you what to do. I'm not saying that we should go through like a rebellious stage or whatever. I'm saying that's the natural process. Just like the child's development is like that most of the time, that gets reflected into the development of societies. And we're seeing that where people look at the Bible and they take it too literally, and they're like, "What? This is
no,
impossible." No, I'm saying talking about like when atheists take it too literally, and they're like, "Oh, that's impossible. Why would I have to do that?" Blah blah blah. But then when they start to look beyond it, at the deeper meaning for why they have to do those things, then they realize, okay, it's so that I can have an elevated consciousness and live in peace, peace with a capital P, because that's also God.
like I guess Hostel had some questions in there. I'll answer his questions. I have no problem with it. What about sexist? It actually tells you to love your wife like you loved Christ. Well, love your wife like Christ loved the church. So I don't see how that's sexist. Um, in a time where you're dealing with where strength actually matters, do you feel like it'd be the smartest thing to say, you know what, all the men stay at home and we're going to send all the women to war? That this isn't TV. This is not how it worked in the olden times. God picked a certain nation because He designed a certain nation, and also certain nations He knew were wicked. That's just how it is. As far as the homophobia thing, um, if in the ancient times, if you took a whole nation and 50% of the people were gay, you would eventually uh, eradicate your own population because you would not be reproducing. There are reasons why things are done. But when we live in the now and we want to just trust after our feelings and what we want to do and don't want to listen to what he says do, that's when there are issues. That's the reason why he talks about doing some of the things and punishing some of the people he says to punish. Um, but yeah, did you have something you want to say?
Me or Fuzz?
Or either.
Either.
Yeah,
I
Franco was
mean,
supposed to. Well, you were supposed to respond to the thing that Franco had mentioned.
Oh, to what
what?
thing?
I mean, when we look at Buddhism and Hinduism and all these other ancient religions, they're all pointing to the same thing. Is what I'm telling you here is what's said in the Bible.
I disagree.
It's the Buddha, all these different manifestations of God that are in Hinduism. At the end of the day, they're all still God.
I
There's
disagree with that.
that's ultimately what they're describing in their scriptures. But I mean, we
I would
can we can
the
we can talk about
the
this
reason
more.
why I would disagree is because they talk about different things. They have different values. The Lord God of Israel says specific things. He gives prophecies. There's things which separate him from a lot of those other gods. Also, if you wanted to follow Krishna and you wanted to follow Buddhism, neither of the gods of those faiths would have a problem with that.
Problem with
The
what?
god of the with following multiple different beliefs and faiths and all that stuff, they have no problem with that. The God of the Bible tells you, I am a jealous God. He tells you, do not follow after any, well, tells the children of Israel, do not follow after any other gods, period.
There must
Do
be
not go into the ways of the Gentiles. Don't do any of their stuff.
You
it
would be
says also that
you'd be taking away from the words of the book if you if you take away, "Thou shalt not have any idols before me," and
but it's the
instead it's
same
okay.
it's the same God. The
No.
idols will be the creation that we want God to be.
No,
No.
when it talks
If we
about
limit it and we don't expand that, it could be bigger. Right? If we don't see it as the infinite.
well, but what I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, folks.
You mentioning that if we need to expand our resources, it's adding on to the words. And for this,
There's
Revelation
multiple
22 and
paths up the
18,
mountain.
God shall
But
add unto him the plagues that are written in this book.
it literally
There
tells
are-
you in the book, I am the truth, the light. I'm the only way. It tells you there is no other way. So by you saying that there are other ways,
There is
you're
no other
contradicting.
way once you're at the destination. That is what it is, the state of being, the I amness. But
it's not.
when
but
you also said that other nations are going to have their own gods, and that what that means is that they have their own practices that will facilitate their understanding of what the infinite is, of what God is. Just like the people that lived by the Bible in ancient times had their customs that facilitated their understanding of what God is.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, for the children of Israel, which the Bible was written for the children of Israel, for them, they are not to follow any other gods. They are not to do that. They're not to say, well, I'm going to pick a little bit from this belief and a little bit from that, and let me add this together. They're
No other
not supposed to do
gods,
that.
as in like the false gods.
No,
Like
it looks at any other nation. Do not follow any of their gods, period.
I mean, I see it as it saying that you shouldn't follow the false idols, like the limited gods that are not infinite.
It literally tells you cannot serve two masters.
It's not two masters; it's the same one.
But that's
It's
not
the infinite.
How can it be the same one?
It's different manifestations of the same God.
How can it be the same one if he is literally saying, I am separate from these other nations? He's literally saying, so he split himself into all these other gods, but he's playing a game and pretending that he's different. Is that what you're saying?
These are different manifestations of the same thing. At the end of the day, all these things
So he's playing
exist,
dress up.
whether in our mind or when we see it in front of us. All these things exist.
So
and
like
even
what you're
things that
saying
don't
is,
exist, the nothingness, that's
So-
also God.
So like what you're saying is the Father is like playing dress up and he's pretending to be other gods for other people.
Is there something in the Bible that says that God is a shapeshifter?
No, there's not.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm understanding. That's why I'm trying to get the understanding of why, when he clearly says that I'm the Lord God of Israel, he doesn't say that I'm actually Krishna also, but keep that on the low. That's not what
I mean,
what
it's
he
not.
says in there.
It's not going to explicitly say that in the Bible.
Actually,
But at the end of the
yes.
day, all of that is, I mean, if you take it too literally, but at the end of the day, all these things are part of infinity.
Precept.
Go ahead.
Isaiah 46 and 9. Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is none else. I am God and there is none like me.
The infinite, right? There's nothing else like infinity.
I mean, and when you read that in multiple different translations, it lets you know he's literally saying, I'm the only true God. There are no other true
We
gods.
are all I. Everything else is I.
No.
Everything is I am. Everything is the state of being.
Franco, if you have a kid, the kid comes from you, but the kid is not you.
If you deep enough, it's still God. That kid is you. I'm
that
still
kid is
you.
not
Buzz
you.
is you.
No, that's not. No,
We have
not,
different egos.
No, we all
but
can
ultimately we're still the same thing.
We all can have the same father, but we're not all the same person.
We're all part of the ocean. We're all water. You get what I'm saying? Like we're all made of the same thing.
But
look at what Thomas said. Oklahoma.
I see what Thomas said, and I disagree with it. But I mean, because for instance, if they're all the same God, why do they have different creation stories?
Because of the cultures.
And that's the reason why
it was created that way to facilitate the understanding for those people.
So that would make a God. So that would make, for one, that makes no sense.
Why
You're
not
going to what that's saying is, okay, he went over here and he just made up a different story, even though he created everything a certain way. He went over here and he pretended like he's somebody else and told these people one story. Went over here and pretended like he was something and told these people another story.
How are you?
So are you saying that the guy played the telephone game
let,
and it just gave a bunch of people false information?
Here's how it's not false information. It's not
because
it's how they're interpreted. Here,
No.
let me put
No,
it.
no,
Let me
no,
just put it to you like this: if you tasted an apple, and you go to a nation that doesn't have apples, and all they have is like blueberries and other fruits, how are you supposed to describe what that apple tastes like to those people? Same thing when you go to a different nation that has completely different fruits. How are you supposed to explain to them what the apple tastes like if they've never tasted it? But they have things that are similar to it. You may use certain descriptions to make them think, okay, it might be something like this, but they'll never truly know until they experience that apple.
The origin stories, it's not like it's something similar, which somebody is just translating different. These are very, very different origin stories. Just even in Native American culture alone, the origin stories.
If it's taken literally, though.
There's multiple different ones which are nothing alike at all.
If it's taken so you literally, can't say that. I mean, look, we're all creations of God, right? We all came from the same mind. And just like everything you create comes from the same mind.
And that's why I'm telling you that so the Bible literally says God is not the author of confusion. That would literally be confusion if he's deciding, I'm going to go pretend I'm over here and I'm going to tell these people that, no, actually a beetle went down and grabbed mud and came up. And then over here, this one says that there was no void, there was nothing, and then I created something, and then I created people, and I mean, they're not even close to the same thing.
It is, because they're all saying that it's infinity, only one.
They're not all saying that, though.
Yeah, they are.
How is the Bible saying that it's the same as all the rest? For instance, how is the understanding in Hindu, that creation story, the same as the one in that they have in Japan? Those stories are nothing alike. I don't know if you've studied them, but they are nothing alike.
It's different manifestations of the same thing.
Well, I think what you're doing is you're taking something that is not very simple, and you're just you're throwing away a lot of things to make them fit.
No.
If one literally says, I created this all by myself, and that's what it was. There was nothing. Listen to me. If one is saying there was nothing, I just started creating this, and then boom, there it was. Another one over here says that no, there were a pantheon of gods who all started killing each other, and then this one fell to the earth, and then people started growing out of that one. This other one over here says no, there were animals already here before everything, just floating around in water. These are vastly different stories.
You're thinking that God is a literal like entity, like it
yes,
has like
I
a
am.
Form.
That's the reason why I'm saying it's different than what your understanding is.
I'm saying that that's a limitation. Because at the end of the day, that is still not the infinite. If it has a certain form, that's just a manifestation. But what you're doing is
you're defining what you believe that would make God an
infinite. That's not just what I believe, though. That's literally what is. That is reality. That is the universe. That is literal infinity.
But how can you go into other people's different faiths and tell them, no, what you believe, that's not what that's saying. That's not the proper understanding of that. That's literally what you're doing. Because
I'm just trying to get you to understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to force anything, so I'm sorry if it's coming out that way.
What I'm doing is I'm trying to get you to understand that these are not even similar origin stories. They're not even similar where it's like, okay, well, there's one guy, he was planting an apple seed, and then this other one, a woman was planting a watermelon seed. Okay, those are similar where it can get a little mixed up and twisted, but some of these are nothing alike at all, not even close to each other. It's not like it's something similar. These are completely different origin stories. So that means this story is either correct or this
No, no,
story is
no,
correct.
no.
They
They're
both
all
cannot be correct.
correct because they all exist.
How can they all
Everything that
exist?
exists is a part of the infinite. You see,
If
it's don't
Franco, Franco,
it's hard to understand it
if
if we
we
think
went
about
out
it too
to
literally.
no, if we went out to a bar and we drove home, you can't say this person over here, his story is no, I didn't drive home. I literally hopped 15 miles all the way home. This other one's like, no, I took a helicopter home. Those are not all the same
Look,
stories.
these are all, for like Stephen brings up a good point, right? These are all different subjective things. That is an objective statement. God
Yes, I
is
am
the
making
objective statement. You
I'm
get what
making an
I'm
objective
saying?
statement because these origin stories are not the same or similar. They are literally telling you different stories. So for you to just say no, it's all the same.
They all
It's
lead to the same thing.
but
It's hard. It's something we have to sit with and think about more, because I don't think that we're going to understand this like just here in this one sitting.
hostile. You want to know how I can explain that? Because if I believe that there is a creator who is stronger than me that can destroy the whole entire earth and I have no say so over it, what say so do I have to tell my creator, the creator of the universe and galaxy and everything? I don't approve of your messages and of what you want to do, and I'm going to condemn you. That's just like dumb, actually. If I believe that there's a creator and I believe that he has power over everything, I have no power to tell that creator what to do and what not to do.
The creator is you with a capital Y.
I don't I believe that it's the same as if a person has kids. You have kids. Does kids share some of your DNA, some of your tendencies?
Look, it's like,
possibly yes, but they're not you.
think about, it's like me saying this. Imagine, all right, you're atoms, right? Because you're made up of atoms. Of course, you're a lot more than that, but you're still atoms. So is the table. The table's atoms. Our camera, that's atoms. If I say we're all atoms, that's not a false statement.
Yeah, but what you're doing is it's not a false statement, but it's also a very vague statement that is not it's not entirely accurate. Yeah, by a technicality, you're correct, but it's like this. In ketchup, is ketchup made out of tomatoes?
Mm-hmm.
Is salsa made out of tomatoes?
Except for the fake tomatoes. I mean, ketchup from like
regardless,
big
but is
from
salsa
like
made out of tomatoes?
the food industry. Yeah. Supposed
But
to
are
be.
they the exact same thing?
They're different forms of the same thing. Now you see what I'm saying? They're different manifestations of the same thing.
Just because something can be made from some of the same things does not make it the same thing. You can make a table out of wood. You can also make a house out of wood. Is a table and a house the same thing?
The table and the house, the way we perceive it as being separate. But
is a table
in
and a
the
house
realm
the same
of the universe, it's all one thing.
How do you know what the God of how do you know what the creator, how they look at a table and they say, oh yeah, they're both the same thing? That from their vantage point, they can't tell the difference between their creation.
Because infinity is indiscriminate. It includes all things.
How do you know that though?
That's what infinity is. Infinity is literally everything.
But now what you're doing is you're being presumptuous and thinking that you can decide what God thinks.
No, God is a state of God just is, right? You can have a state of ising. Buzz has a state of ising. This table has a state of ising. You're more conscious than the table, right? But at the end of the day, we all have that state of being.
According to the Bible, then why would they care if anybody was killing each other?
Because that's a state of low consciousness. You're unaware of what you're doing. You're giving in to the ego, that state of unawareness.
you really believe that, oh, well, it's just because that's low energy and high energy, and that's how the Bible is being determined.
It's not
That's
just
how the
low
Creator.
energy. It's just that you're inflicting harm to other people, and that's going to come back and hurt you. You're in a state of unawareness of who you truly are.
Do you realize where a lot of this comes from? What you're saying? No, from the Christ
In
conscious perspective.
experience.
Do you? No, no. I'm gonna tell you who created a lot of this doctrine. Do you know where it comes from?
What are you gonna say?
No, I'm asking you. Do you know where most of this comes from? Because I've done a lot of research and studying on the early New Age or the New Thought or metaphysics, whatever. I've done a lot of research on the people who came up with a lot of this thinking.
I mean, a lot of those people are going to twist it in a way that
But they're the ones who created the doctrine which you're
reasons.
speaking. They created the philosophy for what you're saying.
No.
They're literally the ones who gave it. Oh, so you're saying if these groups of people who came out with this information,
God is bigger than them.
I'm not talking about that right now. I'm saying you really believe that the people who came up with theosophy, that if they didn't come down with the breakdowns that they came down with in their understandings, that you would be thinking that.
They are still a part of the infinite.
No. I'm asking, do you believe that would you actually not? Do you believe? Would you be thinking that?
Thinking what? That
would
it's because
would
of
you
them
be processing everything through consciousness, low consciousness, high consciousness?
That's the way that I communicated.
Because of what?
Because that's what it is.
And why? According to who, though?
According to the state of being. If you like, it's
no.
It's an actual experience.
Learn this from?
Where did you learn
this from?
I learned it from several books, but when you read these
learned
things,
it from somebody else's theories, which they put on you.
Same with the Bible.
But the Bible, the difference, which I claim, is that is the inspired word of God. These people have taken the Bible and said, no, that doesn't mean that. That means actually this. That's the difference. That's the difference. These are people, random people, which
all these things come from where, though? It comes from people's minds, right?
Most of this stuff comes from Masonic organizations. And
but all these people collectively, I mean, they all have their own minds, right? Our mind's part of the universe.
Do you? I'm gonna tell you something. If you take out certain words, do you realize that a lot of the stuff which you're saying about the consciousness and this is the same thing which Anton LaVey used to use in his church?
I mean, they're going to use same thing with the Catholic Church, saying all these things from the Bible, but they're interpreting it wrongly. They're abusing it.
I've always said the Catholic Church is evil.
Right. I'm telling you that it's a similar thing here with this guy you mentioned.
It's yes, and Anton LaVey goes back to Aleister Crowley, which goes back to Elena Blavatsky, which goes back to before that, what's his name? Emmett Fox, which goes back before that to so many more of these thought leaders. All of them preaching the same thing. All of them
doesn't take away from the universe being.
What I'm trying to get you to understand is, why are these people so concerned with changing and twisting the narratives and understanding of what
for the
Bible
same
says?
Reason that the Catholic Church did the same thing. They'll twist it.
But why are you bringing? But you're bringing up the Catholic
I'll
Church.
tell you that there's several of these people out there that say the same things that I'm saying right here. They have an understanding of this, but they're not preaching what they are saying. I mean, they're not practicing what they're preaching. They're in the state of unawareness. They may be aware about, I don't know, the universe, but then they are uninformed about COVID, or they're uninformed about politics. And sometimes they are purposely uninforming people. And that's because there's something in them that is still selfish.
So
they're not truly conscious then.
So you're essentially claiming that you have cracked the code of their doctrine. and it is you that have achieved understanding and self-consciousness from all that they have taught and have written about. Is this your claim?
No, my claim is that God is just is, and you can't take anything away from that.
But what I'm trying to get across to you and explain. Okay, let's put it this way. If the conquistadors never came to the Americas, do you think you'd be believing any of what you believe?
If the conquistadors came to America,
If they never came to America,
would
you be thinking about conscious Christ and it's about high consciousness and all that?
You're confusing ideology with truth with a capital T.
No, I'm not confusing anything. I'm asking you a question.
If I will believe the same thing that I believe in now,
what I'm trying to explain to you is that a lot of people went to the Far East, took bits of Hindu, took bits of various different relations, Kabbalah and all that, and mixed them together. The actual Masonic organizations actually practice and have worked on this information over a century at least to get it down to this doctrine, which you are now virtually reciting.
Are they practicing what they preach?
It doesn't matter if they're practicing what they preach.
Then they're not fully conscious then.
But the point of it is not about, it's not even about consciousness. That's what you're missing.
We're not discussing here people's like selfish tactics. What we're discussing here is what Christ consciousness is and what God is. Christ consciousness is the realization of who you truly are. Who you truly are is the universe, is the infinite, is God. You, as a purpose, you are not actually Marcus. That is something that was created by the ego.
Why do you keep going? Everything goes back to the ego for you. I'm trying to understand why everything goes back to the ego, because I've read it in their doctrine. They always talk about subduing the ego. This is literally in Albert Pike's book. Albert Pike, who was a 33-degree Mason. You're literally reciting what Masonic organizations and the Illuminati believe.
How do you?
It doesn't mean that they're still just.
Oh, so it doesn't mean the Illuminati.
It doesn't
wrong,
mean
right?
that, huh?
So it doesn't mean the Illuminati's wrong.
It doesn't mean that they're doing things wrong. Well, they're doing things that are low consciousness or causing harm to other people.
No, what it is they've got you duped.
It doesn't change the fact that they exist, you exist, Fuzz exists.
What it is,
all of that is part of the infinite, right?
What it is they've gotten you to focus on this conscious tip. Oh, it's about high conscious, low conscious. That's what it's all about, reaching some kind of state through advancing through these levels of consciousness. They've gotten you to focus on that, but you're not asking the question of why have they focused on that, and why are they twisting the understanding of what
they leave certain
says.
Truths out of it. They don't tell you that you have to also inform yourself about what's happening in the world, your extended self, so that they can get away with you focusing on just elevating consciousness, but you're not focusing on also informing yourself about your extended self, what's happening out there on the world, how they're taking advantage of you. They keep you focused on, just meditate and focus on just accepting things as they are. Accepting things doesn't mean you're not going to do anything about it. You get what I'm saying?
So, but now I got another question for you. So, if you reach this, whatever you believe this higher consciousness is, do you? So say a bunch of bad stuff has happened to you. So now that you reach this new consciousness, do you just ignore and let everything go? Is that how that works? Or does that make you low consciousness to take revenge on your enemies?
When you realize, you're saying that when you become conscious about
well, you're talking about the goal here. The goal is to reach this higher consciousness. So, do you ignore what was done to you? Do you ignore?
No, because that's not being conscious.
So what does that mean? I want you to explain what this higher consciousness means, because you're kind of saying it and it's very
You
vague.
inform people about what's actually going on there in the world. You
And
raise the awareness of other people about what's happening in the world, that it's not just about improving yourself. It's about improving the rest of yourself, your extended self, the world. Because what these fake gurus, these false prophets try to do is they try to make you focus on just improving yourself, on just creating.
But you have no control over other people. You can preach all you want to other people, but you have no control over them.
You have to accept that.
And here's another
but
thing.
You can influence other people.
And what I'm getting from your consciousness, what you talk about, is basically, in order for us to all reach this consciousness, everybody has to be involved in it.
Yeah.
How is that going
collective
to work?
Consciousness? How is that going to work?
Okay, so if there's what is there in the world that anybody agree on collectively?
What is everybody going to agree on collectively?
I'm saying, is there anything in the world right now, just one thing which the whole world agrees on?
Yeah.
What?
Everybody wants peace, love,
no, everybody
oneness.
doesn't want peace. That's not true.
That's why I said peace. Those people that, okay, I'm not talking about like peace as in like, oh, I'm in peaceful with that person. No, they want to feel an inner peace. Like those tyrants, those people that you talked about, the Illuminati, these war criminals, the Rothschilds, they want peace in themselves as we suffer, but they're going about it in the wrong way. You get what I'm saying? They want a peace for just themselves, selfishly, but they're taking the approach the wrong way to reach that goal. You get what I'm saying? Like we all want the same destination. What do you think? What do you think? All right. What is it that they want?
The same destination.
What is it that the Rothschilds want?
If that's the case, then everybody would share equally. They don't share.
No. Because people are not aware. What is it that the Rothschilds want then?
No, what do you think that they want? Because my assessment of what they want obviously is not what you believe in.
All right. They want power, right?
I believe they want ultimate control and power, and to have dominion over the earth, and don't really care about
And what do
anybody.
they get out of that? What do they get out of that?
Control and power over everything.
Okay, and what did they get out of control and power that's even deeper? Like for themselves. They obtain control, they obtain power. What are they having now?
And what I'm saying is
what are they having though? Like they got control, they got power. What did they accomplish for themselves when they obtained that?
They accomplish having power and control.
What's deeper than that? They got it, and what did they get for themselves?
But why do you think it has to be something deeper than that?
Because that, at the end of the day, is what's driving all of us.
No, it's not. If it was what was driving all of us,
there's something deeper than control and power. Once you get power and control, what did you do for yourself? What state have you given yourself?
If they are trying to go for power and control, tell me what else can they do to get that peace? What is their next end game to get that peace?
They want to achieve that inner peace for themselves after they gain control and power. So they're going about it the wrong way, in an unconscious, unaware way.
They're
going about it. Then that's why they're going about it the wrong way, Marcus, because they want more and more and more. They think that with control and power that they'll achieve that peace when they don't need that in order to achieve the peace. You get what I'm saying? The power and control, that is not a necessity for them. That's what they think is a necessity. That's what they selfishly want. But they don't need that in order to achieve the inner peace.
That's your interpretation. To them, here's the thing. You're thinking everybody cares about this peace, this inner peace and all. Everybody is not wired that way. Some people literally just want to drink and smoke. Some people want to go out and chase women or chase men.
And what's deeper than drinking and what's deeper than that though? What's deeper than drinking and...
All right, the thing is, you're thinking everybody wants some kind of deeper emotional constant. Everybody
because they do. They do. Everybody look up core transformation. It talks about all of that. At the end of the day, They
How?
think they can achieve peace, love, oneness through all these things that they don't need to do.
What makes you think that they want oneness?
When you want to be a part of something,
Who said they want to be a part of anything?
I'm saying some people out there, but
Some people,
ultimately, not all, right? Some people want love. Some people want to just be okay. Us ultimately, okayness, love, oneness, peace, all of it is the same thing. It is being with the infinite. Love is indiscriminate because it's part of the infinite. It's unconditional. Oneness is the realization that you are one with everything. Right? Peace, being in that state of presence, of being, which is also the same thing as the infinite,
Thomas,
which just is. The infinite just is.
I agree. Thomas says Franco has a similar philosophy to Native American will of most Native American cultures from North America. But what I would say is the people who came over here and decided to horribly slaughter and murder and take advantage of and rape and steal from the Native Americans didn't care about that same peace.
Of course they didn't, because they were not conscious enough. They were unaware of who they truly are. If they were truly aware, if they knew that they can achieve that inner peace or love or whatever it is they want without slaughtering them, they wouldn't have done it. But they thought they needed that.
Of course, this is exactly what Franco believes. Franco, do you believe if people reach consciousness, we'd have a utopian collective?
If they realized they didn't have to slaughter people, they didn't have to do all these selfish things to achieve what it is they truly want, then yeah, we would be.
But
that's not going to happen in a long time.
That's never going to happen just on people's accord alone.
Oh, it's not going to happen within our within the foreseeable future. It's going to take thousands and thousands of years.
Then what I would say is then you disagree with what the Bible says about people. It literally says some people's spirit is not upright within them. If your spirit is not upright within them, how are you going to reach that consciousness?
They're not going to in their lifetime. But as a society, collectively, it will happen in the future. You get what I'm saying?
How?
Because in the future, how do I put
Marcus
this?
is not talking about things impossible. I believe that what's going to happen is going to happen through the Bible, and it's not going to be through this consciousness.
After that, after all that, well, what the Bible is saying, like the destruction or whatever, that's saying the destruction of the ego.
No,
everybody's ego will be destroyed.
So
if we take it metaphorically, that thing, if the U.S. gets nuked or whatever, if a nation gets nuked, that could literally happen. But the other thing could also happen in the future. Who's to say that after the U.S. gets nuked, in a society that looks back at the U.S. got nuked, oh, the U.S. got nuked 10,000 years ago, or the U.S. got nuked 100,000 years ago. But now we're in that state of high collective consciousness. You see what I'm saying here?
I get what
Stephen.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Jose, I wanted you to weigh in and say something because I mean I hear it and it sounds great.
Oh,
what I'm telling you is people don't. You have such a positive belief in the whole humanity that
if it happens, here's the thing. If there's human extinction, it is what it is. At the end of the day, the universe is still at peace.
I'm not saying it's going to be human extinction. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is I do not believe that it's going to be this utopian society where all of a sudden people are just going to wake up and be like, you know what? I don't need these. I don't need to hoard all this money.
If it doesn't happen, then it is what it is. I'm not attached to it.
I don't need to hoard all this money, and I don't need to let those people starve over there.
I mean, it's hard for us to comprehend right now.
I don't need to genocide these people because they have a different faith than I do. I don't need to. I'm like.
It's hard for us to comprehend now.
No, what I'm saying is the reason why it's hard to comprehend, unless the Messiah literally decides that's what he's going to do after all this stuff happens. The reason why it's just not going to be some just natural form of consciousness and some this utopian paradise without divine intervention is because if you look throughout human history, it has never happened.
Oh,
Ever.
because they're still going through that process of evolution. They're less conscious than we are now. Each new generation is more conscious than the previous.
I don't know.
No, it is like people are smarter now than they used to be, but we're still in the dark ages.
Sin is etched in all of us. We'll never reach that perfection / consciousness because that comes from
It
the
doesn't
literal
have to
God
be
who
with
is without sin and perfection. Exactly.
it doesn't
You're
have to
trying to
be look, it doesn't have to be through people. Right? If we never reach that, at the end of the day, God, the universe, that all still exists and it is perfect as it is. We may not like that, but that's just our perception, our ego that doesn't like it.
I'm saying like
The
what I'm
universe
seeing is like
is
when I
as
read
it
the
is, how
Bible,
it's supposed to
when
be.
I read the Bible, it does not say, it doesn't suggest that. I mean, now in the very, very, very end, when after the Messiah has come, after the Israelites are put back in power, and after the Millennial Reign, when all the nations who have afflicted the Israelites have paid that, pay that penance or whatever, then all the nations will have peace. And it says there will be no more war. That it does say.
So it does say that there's going to be a point in which
But
there's
it's
not going to
not
be any
because,
more
but it
war or
doesn't, but
anything.
it doesn't spell out, oh, because everybody comes to this consciousness.
Oh, it's not going to explicitly say that, but people are going to be more
You'd be adding
aware than
you'd
they
be adding
used to
to the
be.
word.
No, I'm not
The-
adding anything. I'm not adding anything. That's what it says when you interpret it metaphorically.
New heaven and new earth, and there will be no sun. God, who is light, will be with the people. Exactly. So, I mean, it literally says day or night. I mean, Stephen knows his book. Nico knows a good book, definitely. But I mean, I just look at it as this, and like, some things are metaphorical, some things are definitely not. When it talked about, like, there's a part where it talks about locusts. Um, it talks about these giant locusts that have the face of men and hair like women and tails like a scorpion and had the power to hurt men for 42 days. That is something that physically actually happened. Now, I don't have the time to break in and break that whole prophecy down in Revelation, but this is something that happened. When it talks about Nebuchadnezzar's dream, when he dreams of the statue with the golden head, the silver chest, the bronze thighs, the legs of iron, and the 10 toes, the miry clay, that talked about actual real empires. It wasn't just a metaphor. That literally talked about a succession of empires. That was the Babylonian Empire to the Medo-Persian Empire to the Greek Empire to the Roman Empire to the branch off into the modern European
Does it
nations.
literally say Roman Empire and
It pretty much gives you a
it
clue that that's
describes it, but it doesn't call it the Roman Empire, or doesn't
well.
call it.
do you do you understand that if people who translated the Bible actually had understanding of what it's talking about in biblical prophecy, it would never make it to the light of day. So it needed to be written in code.
Same thing with everything else that I'm saying here. Why can't that be
Well,
written in code too?
the reason why they have no problem with what you're saying, because what you're saying is very sanitized and vague. It's not getting to any detail, and also part of the reason why the children of Israel stayed in captivity over and over and over because they didn't follow the law, statutes, and commandments. Instead, what you're kind of suggesting is that they just kind of guess and think what they feel is good to do without following the actual rules.
Who said who's when did I say that people are guessing
Well, I'm
things?
saying that you're guessing because you're saying, well, they should just treat each other right and they should just do this. But there's actual rules. There's 613 law, statutes, and commandments, which tells the children of Israel that they were supposed to be doing.
Let's go
By
over them.
by by not going into those, you're skipping direct instructions
Let's
which the
let's
Messiah
go
is telling them
let's
to
go
do.
into those 10. Let's interpret them. The first one says what?
Go ahead.
Exodus
Go to go. Yeah. Go
Exodus
to,
20.
mm-hmm.
Book of Exodus, chapter 20, and verse 1. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. 1. Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
Okay, let's go over number 1. All right, what is that essentially?
What do you think it is?
He comes
the-
first, right? The infinite, that comes first. The universe, like that, is essentially what started everything. Right? Like from there, from God, everything else was created. Nothing else is above the infinite. Nothing like Zeus is not above God, the infinite God. Prometheus is not above the infinite God because those things are limited. They are a part of that universe. So it's that understanding. It's that understanding that there's nothing higher than the infinite, right? There's nothing higher than God.
Well, the way we would understand it is that because in various other scriptures he says, "Only worship me." Basically, I mean, to paraphrase, "Only worship me." It's not when he's saying that, "Oh well, I'm higher than these other gods." He's saying and he's talking because he says, "After I've taken you out of Egypt." So he's talking directly to the Israelites. He's saying, "No, don't even acknowledge any of these other gods." That's literally what he's saying.
Because those other gods are not God, right?
Well, he considers them basically idols. Considers them idols, not even really gods.
Right.
But go ahead, continue.
2. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments.
Okay. That's pretty much the same thing as the first one.
Mm-hmm. Can you hold that, Fuzz? Bring up Isaiah 14:1. Because I want to know if you think this is metaphorical.
Book of Isaiah, chapter 14 and verse 1. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve.
Thanks. That's what I wanted. So I was wondering, because it just popped into my mind. I was like, do you think that that's metaphorical, or do you think that's real?
That people from Israel are going to rule over everybody else?
It didn't say everyone else. It said those who took you captive.
Those who were taken captive are going
to
who
took the Israelite? Those who took the Israelites captive. It says they will reign over them.
Those who took the Israelites captive are going to rule over the Israelites?
Could you please read it again, Jose?
Verse 3. Isaiah 14 and 3. 14 and 2. And the people, the Israelites, shall take them, and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve.
The Israelites are going to rule over their oppressors.
Yes.
Okay, that is the higher conscious self is ruling over their former captive, which was the state of unawareness, the ego.
I gotta.
I mean, is
Do you?
it
Do you
can that be true too though? Like we
I
can say
think
that
it's
that
weird
is.
to me. Like everything that's said, you take it from being something that's a literal thing to some kind of having to do with conscious or ego, or that this isn't real stuff that's happening to real people.
Can I show you a
That's just
video?
what's weird to me. Like I want to ask,
Okay,
do you think? Have you heard of 70 AD? Do you know what 70 AD?
why is that? Why is it weird
No,
to
I'm
acknowledge
asking
that
you
the
because
Bible is about the self?
I'm asking you something. 70 AD, which happened to the Israelites. Do you believe that was real or that that was a metaphor?
Even if that was real, it doesn't mean that the interpretation that I gave would be false.
But what you're doing when you give some kind of understanding that negates what's happening,
It doesn't negate what happened.
when you're turning it into, oh, it's just about some mental stuff that's going on, and you're subduing your consciousness, that you're literally ignoring actual real trauma and violence and things that are going on to turn it off into
It's
some
not ignoring
metaphorical.
it.
How, when you're literally changing the meaning of it? You're literally taking a verse and twisting it to sanitize it so it doesn't mean what
Because
it means.
it's the realization also that those traumas and
That's
everything
not a realization.
is not in the present moment anymore.
So it's ignored.
It's not ignored. It's absorbed, and it dissipates into the state of into awareness. You
Huh?
integrate it as part of yourself.
No, I'm
It's no
asking you.
longer taking. It's no longer going to have power over you.
Do you believe redlining still affects black people in America?
All that pain that we feel, like redlining, yeah,
Does
that's
it does
happening
it
now.
does it still affect people?
It
That's
affects
something that
people.
happened. That's something that happened in the past. You can't say that that doesn't still affect people. So you can't say that the past, whatever happened in the past, just automatically gets
In the
absorbed and it
present
doesn't matter.
moment, when you're in the present moment and you come to acceptance, again, acceptance doesn't mean you're not going to do anything about it. But in acceptance, that is where you also realize your true self.
How?
How?
You realize your true self by just laying down and taking it. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying just laying down and just taking it. It doesn't mean that you are not going to do anything about it.
So
It
what
just means
physical
that
action
you
is supposed to be
accept that
done?
it's happening. Yeah, this is happening. Oh, yes, I just got punched in the face. That happened. If you dwell on it and like, I can't believe I got punched. I can't believe that they did it. You are not giving yourself peace when you're doing that and dwelling in
Would
the
that
past. Again,
would that
it
lower
doesn't
your
mean you're not going to acknowledge that it happened. Yes, it happened, and you also accept that you can do something about it to give yourself peace.
So are you lowering your consciousness by punching them back?
You're defending yourself. Like you that
Is that
like
is
if
that
you
lower, is
allow
that
that, you're
lowering
not respecting the other person
is that
either.
lowering your consciousness?
Not if you're defending yourself.
Hostile. I already answered your question. Yes. Good gracious. I told you that if I believe that the creator has power to destroy me and the whole entire earth, who the hell am I to question my creator? Come on, dude. Stop asking stupid questions.
So Buzz also brought this up too about native people who got slaughtered,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's you're going to experience pain, but that pain that body is feeling, that is not the true self. That is something that you are using like right now to live in this world, but that's not the true self. If you come to acceptance, you give yourself the peace of mind.
how does I put it this way?
And again, it doesn't mean you're not going to do anything about it. Like you're not
My
going to defend
ancestors,
yourself or anything
my
like that.
ancestors on my mom, my father's, all of my grandparents all went through oppression. How does me just shutting up and accepting it
No,
make
no,
me
no.
feel?
It's
How
not.
does that
It's
give
not
me
shutting
any?
up.
How is
It's
that giving me peace?
it's not shutting up.
How is accepting that giving me peace?
You're going to talk about it to other people about how it happened, right?
How does that give me
You can
peace?
also accept that you can be at peace with your anger. You can be at peace with that. You
How is
accept
that?
those emotions as part of you. The thing is, you're not letting it take control of you and affect you in other parts of your life. Right? Because you're still going to want to enjoy some things in your life. Or are you just going to be angry the entire time? Do you get what I'm saying?
I would say, Jimmy, please don't worry about what my ancestors praise, because I doubt you know.
Again, Marcus, it doesn't.
What I would say is, when you're telling people that, you know what, hey, whatever happened to you is whatever happened to you, just whatever.
No, I'm not saying that it wasn't like it wasn't a horrible thing. It wasn't. It didn't cause suffering. Of course, it caused suffering, but you're
And
accepting that it caused suffering, and you are spreading that awareness to other people.
but how does it
You're not
change
letting
anything?
that. You're not letting yourself dwell in that. You're going to live in the present moment, and the present moment doesn't mean you're going to just like, oh, you're not. I'm not going to do anything about it. Oh, I'm just here right now. That is when you brought up like the Masonic people. They try to twist it and make you think that that's what you're supposed to do. That's not what you're
Honestly,
supposed to do.
and what I'm hearing from you honestly sounds like it's
No,
honestly it literally is the same thing.
it's
And
not.
yes, it is. I can literally show you
You're
word
not going to let other people know about what happened.
and what is it going to?
Otherwise that's living in a state of ignorance and unawareness about what happened.
It sounds like
Right?
acceptance is just be content with the dots on making.
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't
be
mean be
content with it.
content. It doesn't mean be content. It means you will be present. If you are present, you have a more clear state of mind, so you don't act out irrationally,
Oh,
like how a lot of people who want to be revolutionaries, right? We're all in agreement with that about how that could get shut down. That's acting out irrationally. We have to have a clear mind so we know what is the best approach going forward. Does that make sense?
it honestly just sounds like somebody nicely saying, "Yeah, just stuff your anger down inside and
No, it
just in
doesn't
the
mean
corner."
stuff it down. It means you acknowledge the anger too and you channel it into something positive.
And
And so
but
that it
see,
doesn't
that's
happen again to other people.
I'm talking, well, for the moment right now, I'm talking like somebody in the secular, because I honestly believe through prophecy these things are going to be dealt with. So that's a whole nother issue. But from the advice which I hear you're telling, if somebody is secular and they don't have the beliefs I do, basically, not much you can do, buddy.
Oh, yeah, there's nothing that they can do if they're not allowing themselves to understand these
Well, it
things,
doesn't
right?
sound like there's much they could do at all. I mean, what, talking to people? What does that do?
Like if you inform them about what happened, like
You
if you
have
Um,
inform them of,
you
like for example, if you inform them about redlining, like if they don't want to accept that, then that's their problem.
No, it's still my problem.
There's going to be other people that will accept it.
It doesn't matter if a handful of people accept it. If, like for instance,
But can you
you,
control other people that don't accept it though?
what I'm, I just don't get your theology and how it's. I don't get it.
It's hard to communicate it right now because it's
No,
like,
no, it's not hard to communicate it. I get what you're saying. It just sounds like, um,
It doesn't lead to anything productive and something.
how is it
that
not
leads
leading
to
to anything productive, informing people?
Yeah, but you're informing people to do what?
You understand what the problems are, and then with that understanding about what the problems are, you can come up with the best solution.
So there must be a continual reliance on other people.
I mean, we're a community species. You think that you yourself can just change everything by yourself? What's going on? I mean, isn't that what we do with our channels? We try to inform people so that we can have a better society.
The difference is we inform our people, and with our channel, to, for the most part, follow God's laws, statutes, and commandments. Because it's only via divine intervention where we're meant to be led out of this mess.
yeah, that's the only way we get our divine intervention. If we
And again,
listen.
those 10 commandments are supposed to elevate consciousness.
Not that you keep going to the 10 Commandments. It's a lot more than that. If it was only the 10 Commandments, then we still would be in trouble because there's more than that.
There's other things that we have to do to elevate consciousness.
Like 603 more commandments. That's that's what you cannot. No, there it is. You trying to remove from the word.
How am I trying to remove from the word? I said maybe. That's not me denying it.
To reduce it to an issue of being conscious.
I haven't taken the time to read it.
And there's the problem.
No, it's not. Actually, I could take the opportunity to inform myself.
Yeah, you could. But it seems
what I'm
like
saying
you're more
is that
preoccupied with just focusing on
people can realize those 600 things. Like they could probably realize it without reading it, because there are other scriptures out there.
How can you realize it without reading them?
Well, I mean, those specific 600 you could by reading it.
But that's like saying I can learn how to do your job without going to school to learn how to do your job.
You could have gone to a different school.
But it doesn't matter which school I go to. I still would have to go through some kind of education to be able to do what you do. I can't just I can just imagine what Franco does, and I can just do it because I have a positive attitude and I can just figure it out. I'm going to have to get actual technical training in school and study. And it's the same thing with this. You have to read, research, and study. Second Timothy says to study to show thyself approved. That's why you're supposed to study. You don't just vaguely, I think this is what it is.
I just don't see studying as just being solely the Bible.
I didn't say it was solely the Bible. The Bible doesn't even tell you to only study the Bible.
Oh, yeah, because you had to study history and everything.
I study history and archaeology and all kind of.
Fuzz was saying that all you need is the Bible.
No, I mean, it's more to it than that. I mean,
right.
You need to be studying archaeology. You need to be studying prophecy because especially.
And you need to be studying politics.
I would say following it just so you can follow the events that are going on. Because the law for us Israelites is, it tells us if that's not an Israelite in charge, we're not even supposed to put a foreign leader above us.
Oh no, I don't mean like studying politics to be a politician. I just mean looking at what's happening out there in the world, because that is going to affect you.
Like, and I can accept being corrected on like the only text that you need is the Bible. Fine. Like, there's other sources like Columbus de Castro, A History of the Caribbean from 1492 to the 60s, where reading that and describing the events that would happen helps add like a secular source to prove all the curses of Deuteronomy 28. And a lot of Michael Parenti's texts, just coming to mind right now, would also add fuel onto that, to on the secular side of the effects of black and brown people, how they are suffering under those curses and fulfilling that prophecy.
You guys, I just want you guys to take away from this. I'm not saying roll over with the belly up and just accept the beating. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, oh, that happened and just ignore it. I'm not saying that either, because then you're not being aware of what happened and what needs to be done about it.
I mean, the scripture literally tells us to not forget it. It literally tells us oppression makes a wise man mad. And so it condones us being angry. And it also says that for some of the things which are happening, is Marcus waiting for biblical apocalypse? I don't understand. I don't believe in any religious apocalypse. You don't have to, but yes, I am waiting for biblical apocalypse. Yes.
You also
it says all the children of Israel should be waiting on it.
You also don't forget it if you're just like in the present moment. It's just not, you're not letting it affect you in that moment. Like, in fact, you're not letting it take control over you.
In fact, I would say not even only just every Israelite. I believe if you talk to most Christians, they call it the rapture, what they believe in, but most of them are all waiting for the apocalypse and end times too. They believe they believe in heaven, like their sky mansions that everybody's going to. We believe, according to scripture, that heaven is on earth, judgment is on earth also. But yes, it says all of these things need to happen for us to even get to a point where there is no more war, so there is peace on the earth. So yes, all of these a lot of horrible things do have to happen for us to get to a positive point. So yes, I do believe that.
Would you call it growing pains?
Well, the Bible calls it growing pains. It literally says that it says the earth will go through growing pains, birth pains. Let's see. Second Esdras 6 and 9.
Book of Second Esdras, chapter 6 and verse 9. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. The hand of man is betwixt the heel and the hand.
And so what that says is the nation of Esau, whoever that is, I'll let for people who don't agree with our breakdown, our understanding, whoever Esau is at the end of the world, once his world ends, Jacob's world is able to continue. And for those who don't understand what that means by Jacob, Jacob is the progenitor of the Israelites. That would be the northern and southern kingdom. Southern kingdom being Israel, northern kingdom being Israel, the southern kingdom being Judea. And so at that point in time, when the Messiah returns, that's going into the time. And it talks about Jacob's trouble. The Israelites are going to be tried. It talks about all kind of different things that have to happen.
It's going to be a new age, right?
Yes. When it says, if you look up that word for world there, in Greek, it uses the word, there's three words for world in Greek. Oikomene, it means like the whole entire earth. What is it? Oikomene cosmos, which means a harmonious arrangement or government. And the other one is eon, which means an age, a time frame.
Okay.
Just like even in the Bible, when it says God, God is a Germanic term. If you go all the way back to the Hebrew, God literally just means a power. So when it says, like, it doesn't say in your law, ye are gods, means just that you are a power. It doesn't mean you're literally like the Most High God. Yeah, Manitou, high Marcus is Egyptian hieroglyphics, which are, those, what's in the hieroglyphics are the Israelites on the wall. That's what that is.
So what do you guys take away from this convo?
I take that I would hope that you'll maybe take an interest in reading a little bit more into the Bible. little deeper and seeing that some of the things are not, um, though there are some, because the Bible literally says some things are, the Bible is written in what is it, parables, dark sayings, and goodness, I'm messing that up, paraphrasing it. But there are some things which are parables. It talks about like it refers to Israel as a bride, and Christ or Yahweh as the bridegroom, and coming back for that marriage between him and his people. It talks about Israel. It refers to Israel as being the wife who played the harlot, that was going after sinning and following other doctrines and other gods. But the Lord will forgive that. I mean, so it does use allegories, but when it talks about there will be no stone left on top of another stone when the siege come, that's literally talking about when Titus Vespasian came in to Israel in 70 AD with the Romans and completely destroyed it. There, in Rome, still to this day, there's the arch up there, and on the arch it shows them literally carrying out all the different relics that came out of the temple in Israel. I mean, these things are like documented actual things that happened. Like when it talks about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, if you go to that place, it is still destroyed to this day. So when it talks about some of these things, these are real things which you can see when you go into other different histories where you might be reading Persian history or Assyrian history. These things are actual facts which you can see in their history, which line up. I mean, the Bible literally predicted Alexander the Great's rise. What was it, like 400 to 500 years before he was born? And not only predicted his rise, it called him by name. And it said what he was going to do, how long he was going to live, and what was going to happen after he died. And so when people talk about other different faith books, they don't do this. Who said Mithras? One man, Jesus Christ, is another's. No, if you look into the sourcing on Horus and Mithra, they're not the same at all, not even close.
The stories vary.
The stories vary drastically. I know a lot of people watched Bill Maher's Religulous or whatever, but if you actually go into the guy from Zeitgeist, he was just really reciting stories.
Oh, the guy from Zeitgeist got some things wrong.
Yeah,
like inaccurate.
He got some things massively wrong, and they had no problem going ahead with the lie.
I still think there's some truth in what Yona was saying, but that's me.
I believe the way Christianity looks at some of these things could line up to some of those different prophecies. Like Mithras, all he was really known for is like killing a bull. Christ is like never known for killing a bull. Horus, I believe like his mother was raped or something to get in. I mean, the stories are all very, very vast. And then they try to say, oh, well, they all had the birthday of December 25th. For one, they can't find the birthdays of any of these people. And if you look at the time frame when it talks about Mary going into labor, it matches up with the time of harvest and stuff like that. Harvest of barley. So that would have been sometime in the spring, not in the summer. But the Roman Catholics, or was it the Roman Catholics or was it the Greeks? They lined it up so it would fit with winter solstice. And so they took a lot, as they start trying to push Christianity into Europe, they took a lot of their traditions and holidays and took Bible stuff and tried to lump them together. And that's the reason why a lot of people have a bad understanding of stuff in the Bible. Like, for instance, even in my Bible, which the King James, which I have right here, King James 1611, it says Easter in there. When if you go back to the original text in Hebrew, it actually says Pasach or Passover. So there's a lot which is taken out and distorted and twisted, and And that's the reason why. When you read more of this stuff, like actually, either in the Greek or read some of it in the actual Hebrew or translating the Hebrew, reading it, you get a very different understanding than you do in English.
I gotta say, this is the first time I think we ever went like back
In
and
depth.
forth and sort of like a debate. Because usually when we're on, it's more so like we're just like
Most of the time on the same page for
agreeing,
most
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
But yeah,
Which I still got to let everybody know out there. Much respect and shout out to Franco. He's still my boy. But like how the Bible says, like even the children of Israel, yes, they're your brothers and you love them and you're going to treat them with respect and love and literally die for each other. But concerning the faith, you got to go at them. So, I mean, it commands us to do that. So, I have to so-called defend the faith. And I know
Oh,
Fuzz would have liked to use a lot more precepts in reading the
I
Bible,
mean,
but I know sometimes you got to meet people where they are, and if they're not really steeped in reading a lot of Bible verses, then sometimes you got to just talk it out secularly.
we all are trying to mean well, though, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
overall, I do not think anything you're doing is in malice or in bad intent, or just like most of the people who are in this chat. I mean, even one of the persons who just trolls and hounds me and really just annoys the hell out of me. I think his intentions overall are probably good. It's just the way he goes about it is just so rude and disrespectful.
I still think God is love.
Well, he's love, but he's hate also. He's everything. I
Hate
mean,
is a form of love.
I guess technically,
It can be
he
selfish
literally.
love, right?
Well,
But
think about it. When he said he made us in his image, that means he said he's jealous. Do we get jealous as human beings? Yes. Do we get happy? Yes. Do we have hate? Yes. Do we crack jokes and laugh? Yes. Do
do
we
we
get
pref-
sad? Yes.
do we have preference over several things over other things? Yes.
So we
at the end of the
we
day, it
we take from
all
his
exists.
attributes. Yeah, like he literally says in the Bible, "I do evil." So when people think, "Oh no, God doesn't do anything," no, he literally tells you, "I do evil." Because like we don't accept that whole narrative of the fallen angels and all that nonsense. No.
Isn't there like something in Romans that says there's no favoritism?
No.
Yeah, there is.
No favoritism? What do you mean?
Yeah, but I
Romans
mean,
2.
it's at 1 a.m. over here. I got it out.
That's right. It's late over there for you guys.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. The translation you probably read is a bit different, but in the KJV, which is supposed to be the most accurate one, it says in Romans 2:11, "For there is no respect of persons with God."
There's
And
no
then there's
what?
another scripture that'll say, "And not a dog should wag its tongue against the children of Israel too." So it's like if you take certain scriptures just out of context, then it's hard to get the full meaning. It's just like the Christian church. Most of them read a couple of different stories out of the Old Testament and then skip to the New Testament. And that's all they focus on. But if you don't read the Old Testament, then you don't get the grounds for what exactly they're talking about in the New Testament because most of the stuff they're saying is paraphrasing something. It's kind of like having an inside joke. Me and you all know this one song, and then I just say two lines from the song, and we all crack up laughing. That's the same thing that's going on in the New Testament over and over and over. It's reciting stuff from the Old Testament.
Yeah. All right, guys, I gotta head out. But
Yeah, I know it's
appreciate
like, oh
time.
yeah, definitely. I mean, hopefully, some of what we believe has been a little bit more clarified.
There's been a lot of clarification.
Or hopefully, good. I'll say. I try to be somewhat on my better behavior. I'll say, not my best, but better. But Fuzz has seen I can get fiery and passionate when defending the gospel. So, But I definitely appreciate you. Fuzz, you got
It,
anything you'd like to
it
say?
it didn't. It's not like when you went up against freaking skeptical, and then that one guy that sounded like Winnie the Pooh, who was a Zionist.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it is, I didn't even want to go that direction with them, except that they weren't keeping it respectful. I can deal with somebody disagreeing with me. I can deal with somebody having different understanding, but don't start being
I
disrespectful.
got
Don't start lying.
patience. I
Well,
got
they were lying too. Dude was
because they got
literally lying.
impatient.
Dude, well, he didn't like the fact that well, he figured for one, I'm pretty sure that I didn't do any research into what was going on in Israel, and I wasn't going to have comebacks for what he was saying. And then I spent the whole time with skeptical, not really. I'm like, don't pick a straw man that I don't believe in. Then I have to tell you, no,
That
that's
was
not what I
a shit
believe.
show.
Yeah, it was a hot mess. And then he kept badgering me on, well, when do you want to have another debate? Never, never. I don't want to talk to you anymore about anything at all. I don't even care if it's I don't even care if it's Jordan and the Bulls back in the day. I don't want to talk to you about nothing.
Damn. But you get my point about how we have to have that clear mind in order to act out in an efficient and productive way. Otherwise, we might be doing things that are counterproductive. Like, Skeptical was trying to get you to understand his point of view, but he went about it in an unproductive way because he wasn't being aware of himself. Same thing when people want to have like a violent revolution right now without really thinking about
The consequences.
how it can get shut down immediately, right? That consequence.
Well, I mean, even if you supposedly had the weapons, because I was having this discussion with somebody at work the other day. I said, I'm like, you don't think that they monitor all of our communications and they see by your tweets that you're kind of getting into a revolutionary spirit and they're not going to watch you more and then notice, oh, wait a minute, you bought a couple of guns. They're not worried about this guy who's been making threats to his high school and plans to go shoot that up. But if you start making these threats as far as you want to push back against the government, you better believe they're watching you.
Like the anger that they have is understandable, but it's just the approach that they're taking is counterproductive, and that's because they've let that anger take control of them and they're unaware.
Yeah, I feel like if you don't go the faith route, that's fine. If you want to do it through the secular route, you have to just say no to damn near everything. You have to not give this system legitimacy.
Yeah.
You can't it has to be to the point where 5% of the population is voting. Then it's a clear sign that our elections are a sham at that point. The elites need to have that. They need to have that veneer that everything is running how it's supposed to.
You have to let go of attachments, right? They're attached to a certain solution.
Mm-hmm.
They gotta realize that if they let go of that, they could realize a better one.
But that's what I believe until and like when we read in the book of Obadiah, until certain people have been subjugated and thrown basically off of this planet, well, physically off this planet, and just their spirit goes back to the Father, we're not going to be able to get to that positive level, and it's going to take divine intervention for us to get there. Now, you might not believe it's going to be literal and physical and supernatural like we do, but it's still, through our beliefs, it has to be something that's going to be divine.
Even if that does literally happen, the other, like the metaphysical, is still true, right? Because that elevation in consciousness will still occur.
Well,
and also,
if the Creator is giving you understanding of, okay, yeah, this thing in the Bible that everybody was getting twisted up, this is actually what it means. Yes. And another thing is, we don't believe in what is it, reincarnation, but we do believe in regeneration. We believe regeneration is in the Bible, and so that those former selves at that time, that's when you will get that knowledge of all those things.
Mm.
So yes, and without, I mean, we never really reference it that way, but that would be definitely a form of increased consciousness if you know, okay, I lived 50 lives before this, and I have all the memories of all of those. Now, that without having some kind of enlightened perspective, it might be hard to see how you died 50 other times and the loves that you lost and the traumas that you went through and all those things. But in that time, you will be able to handle it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
There,
so
there's a lot
sleepy.
more deeper esoteric stuff that we can get into another time. I don't know. We might have to do this again. So I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you're going to have some questions, and we'll talk more off camera on some different ideas that we have back and forth too. But yeah, we're at the 3 hour mark. I don't want to keep you up any later. I know you guys on the East Coast are struggling, and much love to everybody in the chat who stopped through. And like I said, you guys don't have to believe it. The Bible says, if what if some don't believe? Does the truth of God not have effect? Well, I mean, so for us, we don't need for everybody to believe. It's not required for everybody to believe. In
God is
fact,
still there.
yeah, he's still there. I mean, it literally says, uh, what narrow is the path, but broad is the path to destruction. Roughly. So a good chunk of people are still gonna go their way. The Bible doesn't randomly just say kill women. I don't get that. The Bible says kill a lot of people, men, women, children, all kind of people. So that's not. The Bible says kill men too. It's not just killing women, and it's only killing a woman if they're sinning, like adultery, which more than likely, if the man is committing that adultery, he's going to get killed also. I don't know who that is. Listen, I'm not going to get myself distracted in that, but much love to everybody out there, and yeah, stone men also. What are you talking about?
I mean, I personally don't believe in killing anyone.
Well, but the Bible does. The Bible definitely believes in killing, because it literally talks about defiling the land. How is a land defiled? A land is defiled by blood. And the only way that land can be cleansed is by the blood of him who sheddeth. I mean, it's clear. The Bible literally, another one, it says, prepare slaughter for the iniquity of their fathers. The Bible is clear. And I mean, and like that one which we read on Obadiah, when it talks about Jacob will be a fire, Israel will be a fire, and I can't remember it right now.
Joseph
will be a flame, and Israel will be a fire, and the house of Esau for stubble. That's literally talking about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom obliterating somebody. So I mean, it is, and but think about it. If it's telling them to do that, it's telling them to do that for a reason. It's not just, oh, let's just randomly kill a bunch of people for no reason.
I think at the end of the day, it's about killing the ego. I know I kept saying that, but it's the same theme over and over again.
You got to remember,
finding God within you. I mean, and in order to do that, you have to kill that which is making you unaware.
But literally, they fought wars against other nations. That wasn't just a metaphor. Like when they were fighting against the Greeks, that wasn't a metaphor. When they were fighting against the Romans, the Assyrians, the Persians, I mean, Babylon, being taken into slavery and captivity, there's pictures, I mean, like etched into the walls of it actually happening, the actual battle. So that's just not an allegory, metaphor. Those are real events, historical events that happen.
No, it doesn't mean we have to go out there and seek war.
Well, in that time, the Most High Abba, he will lay out the story how he sees fit, and like he says, he puts the hooks in their jaws and drags men and women to do what his will. So I mean, that's how it's gonna go.
Agree to disagree on the interpretation.
Alrighty, we can leave it on that note. But you got anything you want to plug that you got coming up?
I have some interviews, some big ones coming up
Oh,
next
really?
week,
Like
most
who?
likely.
Oh, who you got?
I'll tell you after the show because I don't want to jinx it.
All right.
All right, take care. Other than that, I'll put out some videos and stuff if I feel like there's something I really want to talk about. But yeah, I don't have anything.
I might have
planned.
I know this is kind of last minute, but I got a panel that I am still trying to work on getting together. And if you're interested in joining that panel, if you're free Sunday, let me we'll talk off camera. I'll shoot you. Well, that's right. It's late now. I'll shoot you a text or a call tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. Trying to set up something. For those out there who might be interested in this, this is open to people from various different faiths. This is just to talk about how their faith has affected their activism or politics, whether in the past or up to recent or in the future. So, love to hear how their faith has affected, their activism. So, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're Islamic, if you are New Age, if you are one of the non-denominational Christians, um, if you have, whatever your beliefs, that's fine.
Last precept.
Sure, go ahead.
I gotta go.
Finish off with one last one, and then we'll close out.
Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man.
Good one. But we'll say good night to everybody. Kwam Yasharallah, Rise Israel, and shalom to everyone out there. Y'all have a good night. And thanks for being on.
Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai.
And thanks for being on again, Franklin.
For sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Me